Hello again and welcome to another 140k Mordian Glory video, and today guys I've got a special video for you. I was very lucky to be on the live stream for the first game of LGT, that's the London Grand Tournament 2021, and it was my Steel Legion versus the Armageddon Ork boys. So it's going to be a really good battle. I have done a full video covering my full experience at the London Grand Tournament, and I will have a link to that video at the end of this one. Now what I've done here guys is I have skipped forward a little bit at the beginning of the video because there's obviously some setup where players are introducing each other and whatnot, and we're getting to sort of the later stages of deployment here. So what I want to do with this video guys is basically I'm going to be doing some commentary over the top of it because there wasn't actually any player audio for this particular battle report, so I'll put some music in the background, some classic Dawn of War Imperial Guard music, and I thought what I'll do is I'll go through and I'll explain my thoughts as the battle goes on. So I'll try and keep like a constant commentary going, but if there's times where there's no commentary, it's just because there's nothing to really be talking about, or it's fairly self-explanatory. But yeah, I thought we'd do it's a bit of an interesting one. It's like a live battle report, but with some post-action commentary, you know, like director's commentary. I don't know. We'll see if it works. If you like this kind of thing, please let me know. I currently don't have the setup to do it in the battle bunker, but if it's something that everyone says is like a pretty good idea, then potentially this will be like a format of battle report that I can keep doing in the future. You know, maybe get that set up in the battle bunker. So let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Now, in terms of whilst we're finishing the setup and deployment here, I'll go through what the mission was, secondaries and stuff like that. Now, the mission was Scorched Earth, which means there's 6 objectives, 2 in each player's deployment zone, essentially 2 in no man's land. And then it's hold 1 objective for 5 points, hold 2 objectives for 10 points, and hold more objectives for an additional 5 points. So pretty standard there. In terms of secondaries, my opponent took Bring It Down, because I give up 15 Bring It Down points, and then I believe that he also took Rod and Engage North Front as well. I believe those were the choices that my opponent took. Now what I took was I took Rod and Engage, and then I went for something a little bit different. I went for Grind Them Down, because what I was thinking here is that he actually has relatively little anti-tank. He's got a big unit of tank busters. I'll be going through a quick list overview in a moment. But he's got like 1 unit of tank busters. Then after that, it's kind of, there's not a lot of anti-tank in his list. So I figured I can actually kind of like lose a Chimera or 2 a turn, whatever. But then I'll be happily able to sort of kill a battle wagon and a mob of boys, and you know, something here, something there. He's got quite a few characters and stuff like that. So I don't normally take grind, but I figure this might be, you know, if I can deal with those tank busters, I can grind for days. So I thought, you know, I'd take it to try something a bit different. He hasn't got a lot of Bring It Down points himself. He hasn't got a lot of no prisoner points. It's always a tricky third objective with guards. So I figured let's try something a little different. So those are the missions, those are the secondaries, those are terrain. You can see that there are 3 ruins in each player's deployment zone and 2 in the middle of the board, 2 big ones, and then there's sort of like a zigzag ruin down the middle. Now the 2 big square ruins in the middle of the board, they are obscuring, so they're good for getting up onto your opponent. The zigzag through the middle is dense, and essentially minuses 3 from your movement as well. It's like a dense barricade essentially. Now in terms of the ruins in each player's deployment zone, from my perspective, the ruin in the middle and the ruin on the right hand side are not obscuring, so I can use them to block true line of sight, but they're not fully obscuring. So if my opponent can see like an aerial or something above from one of my tanks, he can shoot it. The ruin on the far left hand side, the one you can see that's got like sort of 3 Russes and a couple of Chimeras around it, that one is truly LOS blocking. That is obscuring terrain. Now in terms of deployment, what's going on so far, I've deployed in a fairly standard sort of deployment pattern for this list. So I've got Chimeras up front, and then I've got a couple of fire bases of Leman Russes. So you can see that I've got a couple of Chimeras that are in range of each of the home objectives, so that if A, I'm holding them, but B, if I die, if the Chimera dies, then 10 offset guys can spill out onto the objective, and I've got that twice on each objective. I've also got a spare Chimera in the middle, and that's so it can go left, it can go right, it can go down the middle, it doesn't really matter. It's there to have some more bodies that can sit on the objectives. Should have said actually I didn't take run this game, I took banners. And banners is really important because basically my plan was I just want to sit on banners. And I just want to be able, I don't want to have to go outside of the halfway line apart from a few engage points. In hindsight, I probably should have thought of taking something like Stranglehold here and just basically run out onto 3 objectives and denied one each turn. But I didn't do that in that case. So apologies, I got that secondary wrong at the beginning. So I've got my Chimeras, and then on the right hand side I've got a Leman Russ tank commander with Demolisher cannon and plasma cannons. In the middle I've got another Leman Russ tank commander, in that middle ruin with Demolisher cannon and plasma cannons. On the sort of middle left from my perspective I've got the big battle cannon Leman Russ. He's great for slinging shots downrange. And then on the far left hand side I've got my Pask and my regular executioner. What you can see here that we're doing is we're rolling off to see who goes first, and we keep getting the same number, but eventually my opponent does actually win the roll-off. Now in terms of what my opponent's got on his side of the board, here's the problem, he's going to start moving things around in a moment, but what my opponent's got on his side of the board is again, this is all going to be from my perspective. On the left-hand flank, big squad of 20 boys. In the middle, he's got a squad of 10 boys, and then he's got his 3 grots in one of the ruins as well on the right hand side, and then he's got his 3 battle wagons. Now, in the yellow battle wagon, there's 20 boys, so that's just a big old battle wagon of fun. And then in the big orange battle wagon, that one has actually got. Should have said, first thing my opponent does is accidentally knock Gazgul off and actually break him, so that's what you can see. But we get some glue and we fix that in a moment. So poor Gaz doesn't have a good start to the battle. Now, the first thing he does is he's got Gazgul in that battle wagon, and we do manage to fix him and whatnot, but he decides to go aggressively forward with this battle wagon, as far forward as he can go. And I am asking my opponent questions as we're going along, like, can you advance and charge and crazy stuff like that? And he's like, no, I can't do that at this point. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. That helps me decide what I'm going to do next. So he's got his boy battle wagon moving forward, and he's got his Gaz battle wagon moving forward. And then he actually plays it a bit cagey with his final battle wagon, because that's got 15 tank busters in it. And my opponent knows that those tank busters, they are key. If he loses those tank busters, he's really going to start struggling for blowing up my tanks. He does have Mega Knobs in reserve though. He has 6 Mega Knobs in reserves, and so they're not on the board right now. He's also got a Weird Boy and with the big blob of boys, and he's also got a Goth War Banner in the big orange battle wagon as well. So my opponent's first turn, obviously ideally I would have liked to get turn 1, because I have the firepower where I can just sort of poke my sort of tanks out of cover, start blasting away with things like plasma cannons, battle cannons, demolisher cannons, and I could just de-track him. And what that would basically do is mean I would have almost a free shooting gallery at his Orks. I'd have to be careful of somebody jumping, but I could screen that out. But unfortunately, my opponent goes first, and he starts this quite aggressive push. Now, he obviously comes forward with 2 of his battle wagons, and I'm going to have to deal with those, because basically, if I don't deal with those battle wagons when it comes over to my turn, then I am in big trouble, because they are going to start crashing into my lines. They're going to start disgorging boys, disgorging Gaz. So it definitely, my opponent goes for that early turn aggressive push, and that's exactly what he needs to do. He's not going to win a shooting fight. Okay, even with the best will in the world, he's not going to win a shooting fight. So he's got to protect his tank busters whilst moving forward aggressively with his battle wagons. Now he ends up doing some jumping and whatnot with his boys in the psychic phase, this, that, and the other. But essentially, what he's done is he's basically put the pressure on me early on. So here goes. He moves forward with those boys there. I think he does something. I think he doesn't de-jump the big 20-man blob this turn. He hides them in cover this turn, and he wants to de-jump them in a later turn, because I think he's doing an action with those boys this turn or something. To be honest, it's a bit of a tricky one. If I was my opponent, I think I would have de-jumped with those 20 boys early on, because I think he goes to de-jump the little squad so he can do some shenanigans for his objectives in the middle of the board and whatnot. And I'm just there. I personally think if I'm going for the early game pressure, if I'm going to go for early game pressure, then I would put 20 more boys in front of me. But as it is, what my opponent decides to do, and I'm obviously just saying that that's the tip of my Chimera, so you can't go past the tip of that building in terms of staying 9 inches away. And so my opponent's like, right, I'm going to go into the middle of the board. I'm going to do some crazy stuff with my secondaries and whatnot. I'm going to have a good time. And I'm like, okay, like, fair enough if that's what you want to do. But I mean, it does kind of threaten. They've got smaller footprints, or I'm going to struggle to see them. They're going to be able to potentially jump out and start messing up, my vehicles and getting into my castle and just being a general nuisance. Okay, yeah, fair enough. That's fine. But if it was me, I'm thinking, I've gone for a big boy push on the right hand flank. I would have considered jumping, and I would have considered jumping those 20 boys to support that big push on my right hand flank, because then I've got 20 boys in my phase, I've got 20 boys from the truck, from the battle wagon in my phase, and I've got Ghazghkull. That's a lot for me to deal with, but as it is, he doesn't do that in the end. Now what we're seeing here, he's gone into the shooting phase and he's just working out his tank buster shots. Man, oh man, oh man. All I can say is tank busters are really, really nice. So they get D3 shots a pop. They've got great range, and then I think they get +1 to hit when shooting against Chimera. So shooting against vehicles. So previously they only got 1 shot each, but they got 4 rerolls. They get D3 shots each now, and they're blast, so they're actually good at anti-horde as well. And he gets +1 to hit. So I think whilst you don't get the full rerolls, you are getting a lot more shots overall. And these guys just absolutely make mincemeat of my Chimera. I mean, I think he rolls poorly a couple of times with them as well, but it doesn't matter. It genuinely matter. And I think the 6s are like an extra AP or something crazy. So AP -3 flat 3 damage rockets are pretty insane. But yeah, overall, my opponent's like, I can't really see your Leman Russes, and so I can see a Chimera. So I'm going to pop that Chimera. Now I potentially could have deployed it in such a way that he couldn't do that. He couldn't get that Chimera. But at the end of the day, I'm a little rusty with this army. I've not used it in a few years, although it was my go-to 8th edition tournament army. So it all comes back to me fairly quickly. But I think realistically, I probably could have. I probably could have hidden that Chimera, but at the time I was thinking, I kind of want to tempt him out and to shoot a Chimera. And if he's shooting a Chimera, then he's not going to try and get some like funny angles on my Russes and maybe start blowing my Russes about, So and it allows me to deal with his army a bit at a time, essentially. So that was kind of the thinking. In hindsight, maybe I was being too clever for my own good. I simply could have just hid, I hid most of the Russes, and I simply could have just made sure that he couldn't get that Chimera, and he wouldn't have had anything to shoot turn 1. But it's okay, giving up 1 Chimera isn't the end of the world. So he does volley after volley of shots. The Chimera is taking an absolute beating. The Chimera does die. I think I lose maybe 1 guy getting out of the Chimera, and I'm making a decision. I'm like, okay, like, what do I want to do? Do I want to deploy backwards so I can, keep the men safe? And my initial thoughts is, right, I'm going to deploy the guys behind the Chimera because I want to keep them safe. And then I'm thinking, well, hang on, what remaining shooting does he have? What, like, a bunch of big shooters? Like, I don't actually care about, like, a bunch of big shooters. I want to be, like, I want to be thinking about, like, movement blocking and stuff. So that's what I'm sort of working out now. So I'm like, do I go in front? Do I go behind? And I think what I end up doing is actually going in front. I actually end up going in front, and I'm like, you know what? Because what I'm thinking here is Ghazghkull is a monster. He can't walk through walls, and the battle wagon can't go through walls either, obviously. So what I actually want to do with these guardsmen is just put them up front. I might lose 1 or 2 more to random big shooters and whatnot, but don't really care about that, because what I'm going to do now is use the extra 3-inch movement. And then next turn I'm just going to move up onto the objective. I'll hold more objectives, and I'm also going to then block his battle wagon and block Gaz, because that'll be fine. I don't mind about that. So in the end, it all worked out for the best. My opponent gets a Chimera, he gets a bring it down point, and and I get a squad out, lose a guy in the getting out, doesn't explode, and then I'm thinking, right, I can start taking objectives, movement blocking, and that's what I love doing. That's what I love doing with this army. I love movement blocking people. So my opponent's like, right, yep, that's my turn. I burn up a Chimera, push forward aggressively, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, right, cool, straight to movement phase. Let's do the thing that I know I want to do, which is going to be, let's crack straight on with the old movement blockification. So, you know, I moved the guys forward. I explained, this is what I want to do. I'm going to touch the objective, and I'm going to, you know, block off your movement. But I was like, yeah, cool, I agree. That's basically what's happening. So we're all playing for intent, and we're having a good time. And that's all good. I have to say, my opponent and I had a really good game. You know, if you see any sort of take backsies or anything like that, that was because the general rule was, look, we're having a good game, we're having a stream game. Neither one of us has brought like top tier meta bullshit armies, so let's just have a little bit of fun. So you know, we had, I think both of us had plenty of take backsies. Like I originally said, I'm going to put my guys out the back, and then I moved them forward, and loads of cool stuff like that. And my opponent did the same thing. Like there's a few times when he wanted to say, oh, I forgot to do, I think he forgot a psychic phase one turn, and I was like, just go for it, I don't care. So what I'm doing now is I'm thinking, right, I need to hold these objectives, but I also really need to movement block again. Okay, what I need to do is just block movement, because with chimeras and with infantry, because I don't care really if I lose chimeras and infantry, as long as I've got like a few scraps of infantry left at the end of the game, that's kind of enough for me. But what I really care about losing is Leman Russes, because I know in this game that my Leman Russes are gonna be the key to victory. Pretty much in every game, my Leman Russes are gonna be key to victory, because as long as I've got a few scraps of infantry running around, doing the occasional objective, having a good time and all that kind of stuff, then that's fine. But they're only going to be able to do that if the enemy is basically dead. Like if the enemy is basically blown off the field of battle. So I'm like, right, keep the Russes alive, move and block with the chimeras, move and block with the infantry. That's all good. So what I'm doing here is I'm basically getting angles of fire. Now I actually make a slight sort of boo-boo here. And I originally wanted to have it so that both Demolisher Russes were able to fire on both battle wagons, and I just can't quite get the angles that I want whilst only moving 5 inches. So what I end up doing is having one Demolisher, the Russ on the right is able to shoot at the yellow battle wagon, and the Russ in the middle is able to shoot at the red battle wagon. And then the battle cannon Russ can essentially it can shoot. I think the intention was for it to be able to shoot both battle wagons, but I think it might only end up being able to shoot at the yellow one in the end. Again, movement blocking with chimeras, and then I bring one of the Cadian plasma Russes that was on the left flank. I bring one of those over. And so, like you see, I've kind of got a bit of overkill here, because I've got 3 Russes which can shoot the yellow battle wagon, but I've only got the 1 Russ that can shoot the red battle wagon. So, you know, not ideal, really. But you know, not the end of the world. You know, not really the end of the world. I think I'm kind of paranoid about that dense terrain, and I'm like, okay, I definitely need to be able to, you know, take that dense terrain into account. I can't actually remember if my opponent and I agreed if the battle cannon Russ could see the red battle wagon, but I think we were being fine with like the terrain and whatnot, so it wasn't a problem. Now, so yeah, I'm just doing some more movement, moving some little bits around here and there. So my thoughts at this point are, I'm probably going to have to win this turns in the later turns. Okay, I'm going to be forced into a defensive position, and so my opponent's going to take the ground early, and then it's going to be my job to basically try and, you know, take it back when it gets into, you know, the later turns. Now what we're doing here is I'm like, right, I actually want to do a bit of an aggressive push on the left hand flank. I don't just want to get castled in one corner, because that's very quickly going to lead to me, you know, just getting trapped and not being able to fall back and not being able to shoot. So I'm like, right, I kind of want to deal with those boys in the centre. I don't want my opponent to have loads of objectives at the start of his turn 2. So I moved one Chimera forward and a Russ forward to just start playing around with that sort of left-hand flank and just seeing what I can do. I'm a big fan. I've done multiple videos when I was really getting into my mech phase of my guard. I did multiple videos on sort of lone wolf tactics, lone wolf squads, and that's where you send like a Chimera up a flank on its own. And that's essentially what I'm doing here. I'm sending a Chimera up on the flank. I've given it a bit of Lehman Russ support. You know, I just sent the basic Russ with them. But I'm just thinking, look, let's just push these guys out. Now, I'm also thinking I don't want the enemy to start jumping all over me. And I'm kind of willing to sacrifice a Chimera and a Russ to stop my, I know, make that a really tempting target for my opponent, but to stop him from then jumping into my main Russ line, which you can see at the back. You see there's 4 Russes lined up. That's a hell of a firebase. So that's kind of what I'm thinking right now. And so we're just sort of starting to check angles, check movements and everything. And my opponent's like, look, just don't worry about it. Like, it's fine. Like, you know, you've said what your intention is. You've said what your movement is. But you can see I'm trying to be good, but I'm also trying to be kind of like quite precise about, you know, where I'm moving things. So what I end up doing is I'm like, look, okay, this infantry squad is going to get this Chimera, and I'm just going to make an unbroken line of infantry. So I'm just going to move and block the crap out of you. I'm also thinking I want as many lasguns as possible to pour into those Ork boys when they start, you know, when I blow that battle wagon, that yellow battle wagon up, because there's 20 boys inside that yellow battle wagon. That's what you've got to remember. So I'm like, finally, yeah, let's just sort the movement out, you know, final bit of movement blocking. So I've got, so you can see in that sort of middle right, I've got 2 squads of infantry and a Chimera blocking there. On the right hand flank, I've got a squad of infantry blocking the battle wagon and guards. Just in case that all goes wrong, I've got again a Chimera, you know, creating an actual wall with that ruin. And then on the left hand side, I've moved up to a little bit of Chimera there as well, taking into account that the Chimera is going to move, is going to block people, and then also the fact that my opponent will have to go 3 inches over those walls as well, potentially is going to make that Chimera a real move blocker. So you can actually see, if you look at how I've deployed my army, sort of gleaning tactics, and it's really helpful to have this top-down perspective. You know, I'm learning this as we're talking about it. You can see the visible lines in my army, so you can see the forward elements. You know, that Russ and Chimera on the flank, that infantry up front. You can see the forward elements. Behind that, you can see the main, what I would call defense line. Movement blocking Chimeras, movement blocking infantry. That's a wall. It looks like a wall of armor and bodies. That is a wall that my opponent has to get through. And then behind that, you can see that almost perfect line of Lehman Russes. And that's the firebase. And so you can see that's what I've set up. That is my positioning, that's my deployment, that's my game plan is clear as day. Just looking at, and you can see that just looking at sort of the top-down perspective. So what we start doing now is we you know, obviously we breeze to the psychic phase. I've got no psychers, you know, so straight into the shooting phase. And oh, I should say that I totally forgot my relic all game. I didn't farm any command points for Curves Aquila for the first 2 games. I totally forgot Curves Aquila because I never normally take it. Now what we're doing here is I've explained to my opponent the Halo Fire stratagem, where I get full shots against a vehicle if I'm using one of my Russes. So for 2 CP. So I decided to do that with one of the Demolisher cannon Russes. And yeah, it starts off well, and then it just, I think it just it starts going a bit squiffy, and you can see like it's not too bad, but I think I only end up getting like I think maybe 7 wounds not too bad. I can't remember exactly how many wounds I got, but you know, I'm firing away with my Demolisher cannon. And my opponent's like, he's got on one of his Russes like a 5-up invulnerable save, and I think on his first roll he has to make like 7 5-ups, and he gets like 6 of them, and then my damage is like fairly minuscule. So it's just like, oh, what, like, you know, it's like I think I end up using a CP to reroll the damage, and it just doesn't pay off in the end. So it's like, it just you know, my opponent just makes like an absolute crap load of saves. And you can see like I just did like a little pip of damage. So that custom force field like on his Battle Fortress, I think one's got like the Battle Fortress upgrade. So yeah, then I'm just like, right, okay, that happened, that's cool. Like I didn't do that much damage with like 7 Demolisher cannon shells. I didn't do that much damage. That's kind of you know, kind of crazy. But you know, I mean, four of my shots should have gone through, and that should have been an average of 14 damage on a battle wagon. As it was like 2 or 3 damage. Just, you know, it's a dice game, that happens sometimes. So I can start throwing plasma cannon shots at the battle wagon. It starts taking like a bit more damage, but I'm like, okay, so that battle wagon like didn't die. I mean, it took like some damage, but it didn't die. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll use like heavy bolters and stuff on it and whatnot from the rust, but like it's basically like, you know, not a huge deal going through. I think the heavy bolters actually end up doing like some damage to it, you know, but it wasn't too bad. But my point is it's alive. A battle cannon, a Demolisher cannon, Lehman Rust with hit on 3s, rerolling 1s, with Hail of Fire, with rerolling 1s to wound because of slow and purposeful. Didn't kill a battle wagon because my opponent just had like 5 up saves for days, which is like, that's just what happens sometimes. So now we move on to the next Demolisher cannon. This one doesn't have Hail of Fire, but it is rolling 2d6 for the Demolisher cannon shots. It is re-rolling the shots as well if I want it to because of my regiment trait. So like, yeah, so we're just having like, you know, I'm just firing loads of shots, and I'm having a good time with the Demolishers. And so I'm just like firing away, and then I think I end up actually struggling on the wounds here, and I think my opponent ends up getting like, I think, you know, a few 6s as well to save. So it's like, okay, so, you know, my opponent gets like a 6 up save, that's cool. I think, like you said, he ends up making 2 of them, failing 4, and I'm like, right, finally 4d6 damage going through, and I get 3 1s and a 3. So on. So 2 Demolisher cannon russes have fired one, you know, and both times either I've rolled badly on the damage or I have rolled badly, or my opponent has done well on his saves. So it's just like, holy moly! Like I actually thought I was going to blow up both of these russes, both of these battle wagons. Sure, I thought this is going to be easy. I'll just blow up both battle wagons. I'm going to have a good time. And then I'll shoot whatever gets out with, like, you know, the Pask and the battle cannon russ, and it's like that just isn't happening. It's just not happening. It's just like, this is getting pretty crazy now. So anyway, I'm firing plasma cannons, heavy bolters, whatnot, trying to do some more chip damage onto that. You know, that yellow Lehman Russ. Now I think the yellow Lehman Russ had like the Ard case upgrade, so it was toughness 8. So that actually makes it like my plasma's only wounding it on 4s, my battle cannon's only wounding it on 4s, which kind of makes it a little difficult. So I'm like, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try and do some more chip damage with my like chimeras and stuff, because it wouldn't be able to see anything anyway. So I'm just like rolling chip damage, trying to do some stuff to like the battle wagon, trying to use like heavy stubbers and stuff on it, but it's like, it's just not really doing anything. So it's like, fair enough. So I'm like, yeah, let's just like throw another chimera at it. That's fine, because, you know, heavy bolters are like 2 damage. And I think like this like battle fortress on the right is like, it's not too healthy at the moment, but I'm hoping just like try and get some chip damage on it. But you know, I think I get 1 through, but not, you know, not another one. And then I'm like, sweet, heavy stubbers, win games, trying to like get heavy stubber wound on it. But yeah, I'm fishing, you know, I'm fishing for it, to be fair. But I think I actually do chip like a wound off with a heavy stubber or something crazy. But basically, guys, I'm not going to try and go through what each shot is. What I'm doing here is I'm firing like chimeras, I'm firing lasguns, I'm firing, you know, and battle cannons. I'm just firing that whole sort of middle right flank, and I'm just trying to do chip damage where I can do chip damage, and then I can be like, what have I got left over at the end, essentially. So yeah, it's like my opponent's like, okay, you know, sort of saying, oh, we're having a little discussion around the terrain here and whatnot, like what's line of sight and everything, and so we're just sort of, you know, getting angles and all this kind of stuff. But it's again, you know, at this point, That was it. Oh, that was it. We were saying me and my opponent weren't sure if like the big ruin, like if it blocked all line of sight or if you could see across it. We just agreed like. He was like, well, I think, you know, he was like, well, I was going to shoot across it, and I was like, okay, cool, well, then I'll shoot across it, kind of thing. I'm, you know, trying to do some more chip damage, so that's fair enough. I think with hindsight, maybe we got that rule wrong because obviously he's not in that ruin, and it is technically obscuring, but we weren't sure if it reverted to true line of sight there because obviously he's not, you know, there's no walls. It's a square base, but there's no walls. Let us know down in the comment section below, you know, what you think there. I think in the end, what we decided to do was to be like, let's not have the argument. I'll just shoot my Russ at something else. You know, like because I'd already fired like a couple of I think I sort of fired the chimeras out, and then afterwards we're like, oh well, I'll just shoot the Russ at something else, kind of thing. But you know, it was all agreed. My opponent was like, look, it looks like true line of sight to me. We'll use that. So now I'm like, yeah, plasma tanks and all this kind of good stuff. And I'm just at this point, I'm not gonna lie, guys. I'm like, these battle wagons just aren't dying. I'm actually getting a little like annoyed now. Like not like at my opponent. Obviously, it's a fun game, but I'm like frustrated because I'm like, this army is meant to have firepower. Why does it not feel like I have firepower? So I start unloading Pask into this battle wagon, and even though he moves, I still overcharge the plasma. And I'm still, but I use the order pound them into dust, so that I can get real random shots. So I'm like, look, I can heal Pask, I can jury rig Pask if I need to, but I really need to guarantee damage going through onto the battle wagon. I don't really care about damage against myself. So I think I ended up doing a wound or two to Pask with all the plasma, but I think I do end up blowing up the yellow battle wagon. Like that battle wagon took the yellow battle wagon took Demolisher cannons, it took everything. And then Pask just turns around and is like, look, let me show you how it's done, scrub. And so I think even though he was hitting on 3s because of the dense, or it might have been I could get an angle for 2s. But the point is I get the battle wagon. It doesn't blow up, but my opponent's got 20 boys in there, and it's like, oh, like that's actually potentially a lot of boys, which could roll ones. And I think off memory, my opponent ends up rolling like, I want to say like 7 ones. It's pretty brutal, and you can just imagine like Pask has gone. You know, this thing has been like surviving like Demolisher cannons and heavy bowlers and, you know, like conventional weaponry, and then Pask just unloads his like ancient searing hot plasma cannon, and it's just like the power of the sun and like the molten slag of the Ork armor just like starts burning and grafting onto the bodies of the boys, and they're just getting horrendously like melted from. It's like that scene from Game of Thrones when the guy gets the molten gold poured on his head in like the first season. Spoiler alert. This is the first season though, he's not that an important character. So it's like, you know, so he loses a whole chunk, but he's like, yeah, let's just throw down some models, like it's cool, you know, I'm Orks, I got more boys where that came from. So he puts them down the footprint, and then the battle wagon's gone. And it's like, right, finally, after all that, I've killed a battle wagon. It has taken 3 chimeras, it has taken 3 Lehman Russes, but I finally killed a battle wagon. Now I actually think I bring the battle fortress down to 1 wound by the end of the turn. But it's like, you know, it doesn't end up dying, is all I can tell you. So what I think I end up doing is this is where we were having a discussion about the line of sight, and I think the only discussion was I'd shot a chimera at the orange battle wagon, and then we were like, oh, maybe I couldn't have seen it. But I'm like, oh, I want to shoot my Lim Rust, and he's like, and then we're like, oh yeah, but that's in that sight. So I'm like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to shoot that Lehman Russ. I'm not going to worry about that battle wagon. It's movement. The battle fortress on the right is movement blocked. I am going to just fire everything into the boys because they're not going to get an armor save, and there's an absolute shedload of them, which means I get maximum shots for blast weapons. Doesn't often come up, but when you're lobbing, you know, a battle cannon and 2 plasma cannons into a bunch of boys, then, you know, you do get it. But the thing about boys now, toughness 5. So that actually really cuts down on like my damage output now. So I only kill like 6 boys, and if they had been toughness 4, I would have killed like 9 or 10. It would have been like a big chunk. Plasma cannon's going now. You know, again, just sort of firing shots, explaining I've got the blast rules, so it all happens all at the same time, so I get maximum shots, blah blah blah. You know, I've you know, do some damage, but I think the plasma does really well. I think the plasma actually gets 5, even though I'm wounding on like 3. Its plasma's 5. And I'm like, cool, heavy bolter going now, get some hits, and I think I get another wound or 2. So it just goes to show, boys are tough, but they're not very survivable. So one Russ literally picked up like 10 boys on its own. Just like one single rush has absolutely annihilated those many boys. I actually fired the head of the Storm Bolter because I paid for that Storm Bolter, but it didn't do anything. I don't think that Storm Bolter did a single wound the whole tournament, and it had a lot of opportunities. Or maybe it killed a boy. Maybe I'm deriding it before it's had its chance. But yeah, I think it may have killed a boy. That might be the only thing it killed, but it didn't do a lot, you know, even when it was in rapid, the 1 or 2 times in rapid fire range, you know. So now I'm just like trying to do like lasgun bolts, and now we're on to the spare firepower. Essentially, it's been kind of a big turn 1. Not gonna lie, like I had quite a big turn 1, but we were doing absolutely fine for time. Mike's first turn was so quick. But basically, it's a big turn 1 for the guard, but you can imagine what would have happened if the guard had gone first. We would have had all this firepower, like, you know, anyway, because we're like on 42-inch range for like nearly all our like heavy bolters, plasma, and everything. The Demolisher cannons would have been in range to trundle out and fire 30-inch range Demolisher cannon shells. So if I'd gone first, I would have done all this damage, and my opponent would have been stood in its deployment zone. So it kind of made it for a much better game. Much more sort of powerful and sort of fun game to watch by the fact the Orks went first, simply because it's like, you know, it's not a shooting gallery. You know, it's not. Oh, I should say, behind the ruin on the right hand side, where his orange battle fortress is, on the wall facing him that you can't, you know, the one you can't really see behind, there's actually 5 commandos. And my intention was to kill those commandos all game, and I never got round to it. I never got round to it, and they just sat on that objective, scoring it for my opponent every single turn. It was so frustrating. This is when I, you know, again, I wish I had a Manticore. I wish I had, you know, I wish I had something. I think I like lasgun a couple of them off, but yeah, essentially, I do some damage to them, but then the remaining stay there on the objective for game. This is where I wish I had, like, you know, 50-point squad of mortars, just, you know, concentrated barrage, +1 to hit, +1 to wound, and I could have shelled those commandos off for days. But, you know, I didn't have any mortars, and I can tell you now that I definitely regretted not having any mortars, or manticores or anything. But in the end, you know, it's not the theme of this list to have such models, but definitely, when I'm going to be running the version 2.0 of this bad boy, then we're going to be running like manticores and stuff, because it's going to make a big difference. So I believe that was the end of my turn 1. So big turn 1 for the guard. Not going to lie, took a while, but you know, if someone moves that aggressively into my face, I haven't really got much of like, you know, like a choice. So I think there's like some final spare firepower into those boys. I think I'm able to draw like some cheeky line of sights from various things, but I think I end up like doing some like good damage to the boys, but I don't quite finish that mob off. I am able to get some line of sight on them, but because I've moved 10 inches, I don't get like full shots with my russes and stuff like that. So it's just because I know it's cheeky, but like my rust turret sticks out like a little bit, and his boys obviously have got like guns and stuff which stick out. So I'm able to get a cheeky angle from that sort of left-hand rust, but it's only hitting on 4s. It's got no re-rolls or anything crazy and whatnot. So yeah, there we go. I'm not actually sure what I'm shooting right now. I think it's like some lasguns here and there. Maybe it's lasguns in the centre. I'm not sure, but what I can tell you, or maybe it's lasgun arrays from the Chimera. It's lasgun arrays from the Chimera. I was thinking, like, what do I have over there which has that volume of firepower? It's like, oh yeah, heavy bolters, lasgun arrays, all that good stuff, all that good shit. There you go. So I mustn't have been able to get the angle with that rust. I think we were like, oh yeah, maybe I can do it. And I was like, you know what? It just feels so cheeky. So I was just double triple checking, but it was like I can't see with that Russ. You know, I'm not going to try. So I think, you know, like I said, we've got some sort of spare firepower going on here. I'm doing a bit of damage here and there and whatnot, but I think the end result, guys, is that I kill one of the battle wagons, I decimate the big 20-man boy mob that comes out of it, and then I get the other battle fortress down to 1 wound, and then I do some damage to the boys that are sort of on the left-hand objective there. So it's a good counterattack from the guard. Don't get me wrong, it's a damn good counterattack from the guard. But I know that he's got more tank. You know, he's got his tank busters, and I know that Gazgul is going to be having like some pretty crazy times. I think I'm trying to get some like angles on the on like the weird boy, but I don't think I don't think I can quite do it. I think maybe I plink some wounds off him, but I don't quite kill him. I'm not sure. I think maybe the Executioner tries to go for the weird boy. Yeah, I think the Executioner goes for the weird boy, but I don't end up killing him this turn. I know that. I try, and I do some damage to him, but I'm hitting on 4s with a Russ, and he suffers 5, so it's like there's not a lot going on here. So we're into morale now. Obviously, he's got to take quite a few morale tests. A bunch of people run away. He actually messes the morale up, and I try and say to him, like, look, you've rolled 1 too many dice there. But he's like, oh, shit, don't worry about it. Like, that's the discussion we're having here. I'm like, yo, dude, like, you just put a guy back on. Like, you've rolled too many dice there. So I think in the end, I can't remember what happens in the end. We'll see what happens in a moment. But I'm like, look, just honestly, like, just put an extra guy on. And he's like, like that, just don't worry about it. Like, I've got a knob left, that's fine. I'm like, fair enough. I think the rest of his morale is fine, and then that's kind of it. So yeah, it's a big turn obviously, but he's got another 20 boys coming in. He's got like potentially mega knobs and other crazy shenanigans, and he's still got rocket boys, and he's still got other stuff. So yeah, that was essentially turn 1 for both sides. So Orks being aggressive, losing a bunch of people to morale. It felt so wrong, Ork boys losing to morale. No, it just didn't feel right. You're so used to them just being so morale durable, and they just were running away in droves. To be fair, they were running away pretty consistently, which is you know, a bit of a shame, because I kind of like Ork boys just being this unstoppable seething tide and everything, but I don't think green tide is the way to go. I know I actually said when Orks first came out that I thought green tide would still be a thing, but that's because I didn't understand how the mob rule had changed, and yeah, boy oh boy, green tide is definitely not the way to go. Like, you want truck boys and MSU boys like just running around doing their crazy thing, you know, just getting in there, punching up. So, you know, just that's how you want to do it. But green tide, I think you just lose too many on the way in. You're not that durable, and morale is certainly a bit of an issue there. So yeah, that is essentially turn 1. Obviously, my opponent and I are like adding points up. We're trying to work out, you know, did I get grind? Did I get this? Did I get that? How did it go? Kind of thing. But I think we end up working out that I didn't get grind turn 1. Because I only killed a battle wagon and my opponent killed a chimera, and I didn't quite finish off that 1 boy squad in the middle, and I didn't get the weird boy, and I didn't quite finish off that other battle fortress which was on 1 wound. So amazingly, I do all that damage and I don't get grind. Which is pretty insane, really. You know, 1 boy was between me and grind. If one more of those wounds had gone through that battle fortress, I hadn't made all those 5s up at the beginning. It would have been very much, you know, it would have given me an extra 3 points, but that is just the way it goes sometimes. So, yeah, so we've added the points of turn 1. Both, you know, we're pretty equal. My opponent's got some good points, I've got some good points. We're all having, you know, a pretty good time. And then it's like, it's a really unusual perspective, this, because the dice camera is from his perspective, so that's him leaning over the dice camera now. But I'm playing from that side. It's a bit of a weird one. I think the dice camera should really be the other way around. But yeah, that's just a bit of feedback for the live stream people. Should say, big thank you to for the live stream organisers. That is the Honest Wargamer. Big shout out to them. I've actually been to one of their tournaments. They do tournaments and they do a lot of live streaming of games. Please go and check them out. The first tournament I went to of 9th edition was one of the Honest Wargamer tournaments. I took Pure Infantry, had an absolute blast. It's actually the most watched video on this channel now, which is pretty crazy. It's like 100,000 views or something. I've never had a video do so well. Go and check it out. The terrain at their events is fantastic. They've got a really professional setup. They do a really good job. So please, that is the Honest Wargamer. Go and check them out. Really good for doing competitive 40k. Good setup, good venue. Go to their events. They call them Captain's Clash, I believe. Go and check them out. They run them every month, and yeah, very well organised and very well done. It's like they only have like maybe 16 to 20 tables, so they're always like rogue trader tournament size, they're always RTT size. But you know, even though I'm a guard player, I do also appreciate that doing one thing well is better than doing like a big thing poorly. But so they do a lot of like small events. But that wasn't this event. This wasn't a small event. This was a big event. This was LGT. This was Game 1 LGT live stream, Morning Glory on the old live stream. Yeah, I have to admit, I felt pretty good about being on live stream. I've never been on a live stream before. Anyway, back to the game. So we're going to turn 2 for the Orks now, and my opponent's like measuring things up with his what do you call them, like tank busters. I always want to call them rocket boys, but he's measuring things up with his tank busters. Now, what my opponent's trying to do here is he's trying to figure out if he can get any decent angles on my heavy hitters, because you know, as much as he enjoys killing chimeras with his with his rocket boys, he wants to be blowing up the things that will be doing damage to him. But as it is, he's going to struggle to get any angles on. So he thinks, you know what, I'm going to go for that chimera down the flank there with the rockets. But then he's thinking, right, what can I do with Gaz? Because right now, Gaz is being movement blocked by that chimera on the right, and he was originally thinking, well, if I could, you know, kill that chimera and then run across, you know, charge into the Demon Russ, that might work quite nicely. But the problem is that he's really just going to struggle to get the charge off with Gaz there. So what my opponent decides to do is he's like, right, you know what, I'm going to go after the objective. There's another chimera there potentially for me to pick up, and if he can get 2 chimeras in a turn, and that's really, really good. Now, obviously, he's going to struggle to get there because I've got the wall of bodies in the way. But he does get like a good sort of move with Gaz, and I think he gets his war boss out as well, his war banner out as well, Knob with War banner. Now, I believe that my opponent called a War turn 2, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the War allows him to, with Gaz's War, it's like a mega War, allows him to move and advance and still charge. So if you're seeing him do any sort of advance rolls here, that's what was going on. Like, and you know, you'll see he'll do some charge later on. So my opponent moves his weird boy over from one ruin to the other, just on at the top there, and he's doing that because he wants to try and, you know, not just allow him to shoot over and do damage to him, but he also wants to be, like, you know, thinking about engage and points like that. So he needs a weird boy in that corner. Now again, he does a move and advance here. He gets a nice advance roll, and those boys come boiling out of the building and in front of my chimera. And at this point that I realise, like, wow, new boys. I mean, I say new, but 32mm base boys is actually quite big, and I start realising that I'm in real trouble here because he's going to be able to wrap and trap my chimera. And if he doesn't need to even kill it, an ideal scenario for my opponent here is he doesn't kill my chimera, in fact wraps it and traps it and then kills it in my turn. And that's kind of what my opponent's going for here. Like, he's just going to boil out these boys, he's going to do as much damage as possible. If he can kill the vehicle, then the guys inside you know, might not be able to get out, which means they might die. So yeah, that's what my opponent's setting up. So he is, you know, he's moved, but the Battle Fortress can't move forward. It can't get through those guards and are blocking it. Gaz could get around the flank though. That's a mistake for me. So I've got pressure on the right flank. I've got rocket boys supporting that right flank, and then on my left-hand flank, you know, I've got 20 boys boiling out that building, and I've got also there's a bunch of boys in the building as well. You know, who are, yeah, only 5 or 6, but 5 or 6 boys can mess up a squad. They can tag a tank. You know, they can do stuff, and then you know, so I've got pressure on both flanks. But again, I think my opponent maybe would have been better if he'd put all the pressure he had on one flank, totally overwhelmed it, and then potentially, you know, use that to just really deny me primary victory points. That's, you know, maybe something he could have considered. But you know, he wanted to, you know, 40k is a bit of a funny one because of the way, you know, if it takes him too long to do that kind of maneuver, then my opponent's going to start struggling, you know, on primary himself. You have to punch through and you have to reliably do that. Not a tricky thing to do against a wall of steel. So here come the rockets again. They're having a good time. My opponent's just working out the number of D3 rockets he's got, and they're all going into that Chimera, the movement blocking Chimera there. So that's fine. You know, I don't expect it to live. I positioned it there as a movement blocker, not for it to live long. I think he does end up getting it. I mean, I think it's like, I think he does end up getting it. I'm gonna go on the assumption that we'll have to see, but he's firing like a whole load of rockets at it. Do you know what I mean? So it's a lot of stuff happening. So I think we've got the hits here. Then it comes down to wounds, and then yeah, there we go. So there's a lot of like different damage, because obviously they're all damage 3, but some of them are AP -3, some of them are AP -2. And then yeah, we've got a whole bunch of like saves coming in here now. So in the end, I think he definitely pops it. Does it explode? And it does not explode. And there goes the second Chimera. So my opponent's picked up 2 bring it down points now. You know, he's having a good time. You know, he's having a good time. So now we're looking at you know, he's like, okay, that's like his main shooting. He's got the pitter patter of big shooters here and there, but you know, he's got Gaz's weapon as well, which doesn't do a huge amount. But you know, it's, you know, the Orc shooting is not the main attraction here. But those tank busters, I mean, if he really could, you know, bring them to bear on one of my Lehman Russes, it would be terrible. But fortunately, at this point, I've been able to deny him there. So I think, like I said, the remainder of my opponent's shooting is like the pitter patter of sluggers and heavy and big shooters and stuff like that. But I think now he's like, look, I'm not going to bother much with that. I'm just going to get straight into the charger. So yeah, charges the battle fortress in. It's on 1 wound, so it's not having a particularly good time. But now he's like, right, I'm going to charge this boy in, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to overwatch you, because I realise that if this boy gets in and tags one of my tanks, that's like a big deal. That Chimera, that's like a big deal. But like, if I'm not going to kill enough boys on Overwatch over on that flank, so you know what, that if I can kill this Orc boy, it's actually quite a big deal. So I go for it. I'm like, yeah, here come the heavy bolters. I get the hit, I get the wound, and then it's like, oh yeah, you know, that's AP -1. It's a flat 2 damage. That's it. That's all I needed to get through, 1 heavy bolter wound. And so yeah, so that's actually quite big, because it's like now that Chimera is free. It's free to do whatever it wants, and you know, the pitter patter of shots over on there. If I kill 1 boy out of that big mob of 20, I don't care. It's not going to affect the outcome of the situation. But if I kill that boy there, it definitely stops him from tagging a Chimera. Now you could argue, well, what about, you know, you're doing Overwatch with the blast weapon on the Lehman Russ? My opponent just didn't charge Lehman Russ. He was like, you know what, I'm just going to get a charge roll, and I'm just going to see how far I go, and I'm definitely going to wrap the Chimera, and you know, I'm not going to charge the Russ, and if I can tag it, that's great, and if I don't tag it, then whatever. My opponent gets a semi-decent charge off, but you know, he really now, based on like that charge roll that he's got, he really actually needs to kill the Chimera now if he wants to tag the Lehman Russ. Because if he doesn't kill the Chimera, he's in base to base with it with the relevant models, and he won't be able to actually consolidate into the Russ. Like, if he doesn't kill the Chimera, okay. So that's kind of like a big thing for my opponent there. Like, he really does want to, you know, like blow that Chimera up, and then he wants to, you know, or wrap it up. And then he wants to go into the Russ. So he's, you know, that's what he's trying to do. Obviously, he's got to maintain coherence whilst doing that as well. So that's why his boys are spread out, but like closely knit together. They're on 3 sides of the Chimera. Now, I think he goes for some other potential. I'm thinking this is Gaz. This is Gaz and his wire buddy, and they go barreling in, and yeah, he's just having a good time. Like, he's just having a good time. So I think we're like, I basically think, like, look, you might be able to. He's like, what can I pile into? What can I tag? I'm like, look, you've basically got free reign over there. Like, you know, you kill those guardsmen, you'll have pretty much free reign to tag in the Chimera, to tag through the Guardsman squad, like, just, you know, if you can kill all those Guardsmen. Like, fair enough. So, predictably, you know, he's obviously I could interrupt, but I'm not going to interrupt, am I? I mean, I've got a bunch of Guardsmen which aren't going to do anything to Gaz, and a Chimera which isn't going to do anything to 20 boys. So, my opponent goes and has free range of the combat. He's just working out his attacks. I think he's... I'm not sure which unit he goes with first, so we'll just have to, you know, see what happens. But he's, you know, he's in my lines now. You know, he's got 20 boys in my lines. He's got Gaz, and, you know, Gaz is a real problem because I don't have the ability to do more than 4 wounds to him a turn. And that means he's not going to die till turn 4 if I actually kill him. You know, which is tricky. There's no guarantee that Gaz is going to die at the end of this game. No, real good move putting him in the battle wagon there. I think what the TOs said to me after, like, we're not sure if we could put Gaz in the battle wagon, but I'm sure you can. He just ends up taking up the slots of like 12 other people or something insane. Like, he's an absolute big chunky boy. But yeah, let me know down in the comment section. Whether he was allowed to or not, I would have happily let my opponent put Gaz in a battle fortress because it's just such an Ork Gaz thing to do. And for those of you wondering, that battle fortress model that my opponent has, you know, he's obviously got the 2 standard battle wagons, but that battle fortress model is actually like one of the original OG 1990 something Forge World battle fortress bastards. Like, it's a proper fucking old model. So, you know, Gaz is definitely deservedly, you know, riding around it. That's why he's paid for things like the zap gun on it, because back in the day putting a zap gun on was like a big deal. So Gaz goes first, and he, you know, ends up killing like a bunch of Gaz, and I'm deciding which ones I want to take off, blah blah blah. But the key thing is I basically just want to have one Guardsman staying around, because if I have a Guardsman staying around, then Banners is going to be, it's going to be fine. Banners is going to give me a good, you know, an extra point at the beginning of my turn. And points mean prizes. Or at the very least, points mean victory, potentially. So then he's got his knob with, you know, just like a chopper going. And, you know, he kills, like, you know, I get a few saves against that. But save -1. So, you know, I'm not expecting to do very well. And yeah, basically, there's like, I think by the time the dust settles, there's a couple. There's like there's a few guard left over. And you know, it's like, okay, that's fine, because like either I'm not going to worry about morale, or I'm going to burn 2 CP, or I'm going to spend, you know, D3 or whatever, you know, spend 1 speed to taking a D3. The point is that objective is safe. It's safe enough, that objective, that I'm going to you know, I'm going to retain my banner, retain the obsec on there, and, you know, get plenty of primary at the beginning of my turn 2, which is important. We want lots of primary. So I think my opponent now is literally counting out the billion dice that he gets to roll for his Ork boys. Now, I don't remember quite how we divvied it up, but he ends up rolling like literally, like, I think it's 3 waves of dice or something insane. So it's pretty cool. I have to say, you know, it's that was it. It was the battle wagon went next, and he ran over a Guardsman because it's on very reduced attacks at this point. So it ran over 8, like. It's a bit like that scene in Wallace and Gromit when the dog gets, like, you know, the robot dog gets pulled into like the dog food making machine. It sounds grim if you've not seen it. Go and watch it. Wallace and Gromit, not the wrong trousers. It's, what is it? It's the best Wallace and Gromit one, and it's not the wrong trousers. It's not a Grand Day Out. It's whatever it's called. But it's a really, anyway, totally random off topic, but it was like that scene. Anyone who's watched that film, you know what I mean. It's a great film. Go and watch it. It's Play-Doh or Playmation. It's a lot of fun. Sounds a lot grimmer than it is when I was talking about, you know, robot dogs getting pulled into things, but just go and watch it. It's cool. Anyway, so this is my opponent now doing like a million Ork boy attacks, and it's not. He gets like exploding 6s and whatnot from like Goths and stuff, and I think we maybe forget it for one round of combat, not full round, like for one wave of combat, but we remember it for the other ones. But I think what we end up sort of learning here is, like, you know, Ork boys, they're hitting on 3s, that's fine, but then they're wounding on 5s, and that's actually like kind of difficult. And bear in mind, you know, the luck always comes back around, guys. That's what we've got to remember. The luck swings one way, but the pendulum will swing back. And my opponent's been doing like fantastically on like saves and stuff, and for like his battle wagons and stuff, and I've done poorly on damage. But now the pendulum starts to swing back, and it's like he's really struggling to get those 5-ups to wound, and then I'm just like making saves. So like it's not going well for him. So I got these like 3 or 4 waves of dice that my opponent is chucking at my Chimera. It's like he's not actually doing a huge amount of damage. And this is where we remember the exploding 6s. But you know, he hadn't done a lot of damage. Like, you know, he hadn't done a lot of damage at this point, so I'm not sure how much exploding 6s would have helped. You know, maybe it wouldn't have. Maybe the dice gods punished him for forgetting. But yeah, it comes down to like how many wounds he has, and it's like he just doesn't do many wounds at all. So I think after the dust settles, he's got like another few attacks, but you know, I'm just going to sort of skip ahead here a little bit. Once he's, you know, the choppers have stopped clanging on the side armor of the Chimera, what like we end up realizing is that the Chimera is going to live. The Chimera's got a real solid chance. The Power Claw might be able to bring it back, but you know, obviously it doesn't. It's manageable to hit with a Power Claw, so it's not ideal. So the Chimera actually weathers the storm of choppers relatively okay. I think the so I think the big the Power Claw doesn't actually. I think it doesn't actually quite finish it off. I get like a couple of saves and whatnot because I get like 6-ups against the Power Claw, but it's only like flat 2 damage now. So once it's all said and done, the Chimera is left alive. Or I think it's bottom bracket. It's bottom bracketed, but it is left alive, which is pretty intense. Might even be left alive like 1 wound or something, but it does live, which is, you know, pretty big. Because it means now that I've kind of got to this. I've got, you know, a plan now. I've got to decide what I'm going to do about those boys. But the thing is that, you know, my opponent, you know, he forgot to like pile in and consolidate. But I was like, you know what, dude, just go for it. Like, yeah, I know you forgot, and I was like, look, just go for it. Look, like, just gentleman's agreement, like pile in, but just like don't be like a dick and just like, you know, start tagging loads of stuff because, you know, you did forget. And he was like, yeah, no, that's totally fine. Like, I'll just wrap and trap the Chimera because I didn't need to let him wrap it at all. You know, he did forget. You know, like technically speaking, I could have just been like, no, you forgot. You know, suck it. But it was like, no, we won't do that. That's a dick move. Let's meet in the middle. Like, you do your piling and your consolidates and whatnot, and you know what you forgot to do. And I'll just have like, you know, my leaving Russ, just like leave that alone kind of thing. Which I think was like, you know, that's what my opponent suggested, and I was like, you know what, that's like a pretty fair approach and whatnot. So that's like the Orc turn 2, and it's like, right, let's start swinging back over to the old like guard. I think I do like some scattered attacks here, so I've got like a few attacks on Ghazghkull, which obviously, you know, I go for Ghazghkull because I'm like, if I do a wound or 2 to Ghazghkull now, it's a combat phase, it'll make potentially life easier for you know, for when I'm trying to do damage to him in subsequent turns. So, you know, it was pretty good. But I don't think I ended up doing anything to Gaz, and I don't think I ended up doing anything. Oh yeah, the battle wagon was on like 1 wound, and I was like, come on, I can kill it now. That would be so helpful. And then I don't do any damage to it. Like, it's like, oh god, just needed 1 bayonet to like jam up the spokes of that battle fortress, but it wasn't to be. So I get like 1 attack with the Chimera, do fuck all, of course, you know, I'm hitting on 6s, you know, sweet FA, that kind of jazz. So yeah, so that's like my scattered attacks, you know, it would have been good, if I could have finished that battle wagon off, that would have been nice, battle fortress off, but whatever. So then it's like, right, yeah, let's start, you know, doing some, I think I do, like, there's like nothing else we want to do, we're just talking about, we're talking about points, yeah, we're just talking about points at this point, I love that saying. So yeah, like, not a bad turn for the Orcs, but I would definitely say at the end of Orc turn 2, the Guard are kind of in an alright position. You know, it's turn 2, we haven't lost any Lehman Russes, the Chimeras have taken a battering, and my infantry's taken a bit of a battering, but that's alright, because I don't really mind if I lose the majority of the chimeras and the infantry, as long as I can, you know, use the tanks to continue to do damage. And then if there's nothing left on the Orc side of the board, then, you know, that means I can start taking points, you know, doing objectives. Now, what happens here is I'm like, you know what? Let's drop down some Psiony boys down here. Because I'm like, that'll, you know, I can drop down here. There's no one on this objective. You know, I can like drop down and like do a banner or something. You know, I can drop down. Even if I don't do a banner, you know, which I don't think I do a banner this turn actually. You know what I do? I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna drop down. I can pick off the remaining boys that are in that building. You know, the one that's sort of pointing towards me, the one with the big buildings in the middle that's pointing towards me, the walls facing me. Or I could pick off that weird boy. I mean, that weird boy's taken 2 wounds. Oh, he's only got 2 wounds left or something. So, you know, I've got options, and those Scions literally can do like, what, you know, 1 of 3 things. They can raise a banner, they can pick off a weird boy, they can kill some regular boys. No matter what happens, they've got options. So they're real sort of toolbox units. Just 5 little Scions just dropping in. Getting me engage points, all that jazz. So I don't bring in the other squad of Scions at this point. I wait. I'm like, I don't need to bring the squad of Scions in. It's better for me to have reserves. And at this point, I'm like, look, I can't withdraw from battle. I can't fall back with this Chimera, and I can't get out over the top of your guys. Like, I can't do that. So I'm in trouble with the guys in that Chimera. I am in trouble. And I then think, well, you know what? I realised that. Well, we'll get to that in the charge phase, but I'll tell you now. Basically, what's going in my head now is I'm thinking, okay, well, if those boys struggle to kill a Chimera, then they're definitely going to struggle to kill a Lehman Russ, which has got 2 more wounds. So actually, what I end up doing in the charge phase is I charge my Lehman Russ in, because it's just a basic one. It's not Pask. I'm kind of okay with the Orcs just like banging on the hull of, you know, that Russ. I don't really care about it. They won't be able to like pile in and consolidate and wrap and trap me. And even if they do, I can Desperate Breakout. And even if they degrade me down to my bottom profile, I can use Relentless to get back onto my top profile. So that Russ is going to escape one way or another. Either it'll die on the Desperate Breakout or it'll just get out. And those boys will be stuck out in the open. But this turn, those 20 boys are safe. I can't deal with them this turn. But next turn, I need to keep them contained until turn 3, basically. So, start like doing some movement. And I'm sort of trying to figure out how to get angles on battle wagons and whatnot. And this, that, and the other. Because I really want to be able to get like an angle on the Tank Buster battle wagon. Which is tricky, to say the least, but it actually has lots of sticky out bits, and I can actually see, like from the back corner of a tank, I can see, or from like the front of a tank, I can see like a heavy stubber or like one of those buffalo horns on the front sticking out. So you know what, I'm going to get the angles on, and I can actually look, and I'm sort of pointing to my opponent, look, I can see that. I can see the tip of my track straight across to the fucking big shooter out the back, so I know that vehicle's there. My opponent's like, yeah, fair enough, like, that's a fair cop kind of thing. And then it's like, you know, I need to move. I'm like deciding where I want to put my other Russes and whatnot, but I'm thinking I can't get those boys this turn, so, you know, I'm considering retreating my Russ and all this kind of stuff. But like I said, in the end, I end up basically, I'm going to go into combat. And I realise that sort of the left flank and the right flank are kind of fine. You know, he can shoot across from there and see that battle wagon. He's in range, so that's fine. And like the other Demolisher cannon can see that battle wagon. I mean, it's only got 1 wound, but whatever. Like, I can still see it. I'm obviously concerned about Gaz, so I continue to move and block with my remaining infantry. And you know, I sort of hide behind the back of the movement block. And yeah, that's basically what I'm doing. I'm just continuing to have this line of chimeras, continuing to have this line of infantry just corralling, just movement blocking, sandbagging, what do I call it, speed bumping, tar pitting, all these like terms that we use in 40k, and I'm using them. I'm using them. Like, I am keeping his damage dealers at bay, and at the same time I am using my damage dealers to punish him. So that's what I do here. And I'm like, I also appreciate that I could do with some more bodies on like that objective. And I also appreciate that I don't want Gaz, if to go round the left and start getting into that battle cannon Lehman Russ. So I'm like, you know what, that infantry, and you can see in front of the Lehman Russes, you can still see that line has been maintained. I've got the working from the left, sort of middle left. I've got the Chimera, followed by a full squad of infantry, followed by a Ruin, which moves and blocks Gaz because he's a monster, followed by a Chimera, followed by the remnant of an infantry squad. And it's like, that is, you're not getting to my tanks. And then I'm like, okay, and with the other bigger squad, I'm going to spread out. So I'm sat on 2 objectives. My footprint's on 2 objectives. Now, even if I end up holding 1 by the end of the show, that's fine, because I'm on 2 objectives, which makes my opponent have to think when it comes to his turn. Because right now I'm on 3 objectives with OBSEC. That's a tricky situation for my opponent to be in. So it's constantly just like making my opponent just think about things, work for it, all that kind of stuff. So it's it's I'm playing around with like some movement and trying to make sure I've got some angles and whatnot. But like I actually make, it's a bit of a risky maneuver. I bring 2 of the 2 Demolishers together, and I'm like, this is just like a killing field. In hindsight, based on what happens later, it might have been an unnecessary risk to have both of those Demolisher tanks where they were. Because I'm not going to kill Gaz, and my opponent can, he has firepower where he could clear Chimeras and infantry. He's got Morks Raw and all that kind of stuff. So, in hindsight, I should never have 2 main battle tanks that close together. I mean, if you look at the instances where I move my tanks close together, I've got those 2 Demolishers there. That's a tempting target. I've got the Chimera and the other tank up there. That's a tempting target. They were both ripe opportunities for my opponent to tag multiple vehicles. Now, I don't care if he tags multiple Chimeras. And in fact, as of recording this video, I've just got the remaining, the final batch of double heavy flamer turrets for my Chimera, or heavy flame turrets for my Chimeras through. So in the future, I really won't care if my opponent ties up my Chimeras. But in this game, I don't care, because I'm not bothered about the damage output from the Chimeras. They're literally just 10 toughness 7, 3 up armor save, 10 wound bricks of movement blocker. That's what they're there for. But if you see that cluster of Russes, 2 Russes and the Chimera together, really is a tempting target. So now we're on to the shooting phase, of course, and I'm just trying to do some shooting into I believe I go into the main battle fortress, and I think I do get it. It only had 1 wound left, but I just wanted to make sure it would die, so I still put a whole Lehman Russ into it. I believe I put a whole Lehman Russ into it. I think I was like, I just don't want to risk it. So now that that's dead, I'm like, right, everything else can, the battle cannon and the Demolisher cannon, other Russ can go into the tank buster, the remaining battle wagon, because look, it's just it's just the one that's left over. Now this battle wagon, the other 2 had various durability upgrades. The yellow one had toughness 8, the battle fortress had a 5+ invulnerable. This battle wagon has no upgrades on it whatsoever, nothing, nada. But it does need to die. So I put in, the full Demolisher cannon, I hail a fire onto that bad boy, I reroll 1s to hit. My opponent's like, oh, are you in range? And I'm like, I thought Demolisher cannons are only 24-inch range. I'm like, they are, but I've got a 30-inch range Demolisher cannon. He's like, oh, damn you and your custom regiment traits. So I'm like, yeah, here we go. I get some 1s, but you know what? It doesn't matter that I get some 1s, because I have got slow and purposeful. So I do an absolute shed load of wounds to this battle wagon. My opponent gives it a good go, to save it. I think he does make a few saves here and there, but it's -3, and it's 8d6 damage or something insane, and it just gets absolutely annihilated. It's I think it's 8d6 damage or 9d6 damage, and yeah, it just dies. It doesn't explode, I don't believe, which is good for my opponent, because if it had exploded, it would have taken those commandos off that objective, which would have been very helpful for me. But as it was, it doesn't explode, so it just goes, it just sort of carries on. I think the Ork symbols are, are wands in this case. Now what happens is my opponent's got 15 tank busters and a character in there. And he rolls a lot of wands again. His boys had not done the emergency disembarkation training, or as Orks would probably say, emergency disembarkation training. I don't know, that's a terrible Ork action. You guys know what I mean. Yeah, they hadn't done that. That's a fucking horrendous accent. I really should redo that, but we don't. We're doing it live. Fuck it, we're doing it live. So it's a live battle report, so I might as well do a sort of live and edited commentary. Jesus Christ. Anyway, so the battle wagon goes, and a shed load of the rocket bastards go as well, which is important, because whilst I won't be able to see them now, because he can just get out behind that building, which is very good for him, it does mean that he is essentially now demobilized. And if you look at the field of battle now, and you look at the level of armor that I have on the field still, and the level of armor that he has on the field, it's like, this isn't funny. And if you think about the mobility that I now have over him, now sure, I'm probably going to lose 2 chimeras. I'm going to lose 1 in my turn, and I'm probably going to lose the remaining 1 in his turn. I mean, that's probably what's going to happen, right? But I still, he basically now has like no mobility himself, whereas I can still do things like full throttle with Leman Russes. If I need to get a Leman Russ onto objective because there's no one else around, I will full throttle onto it. So that's, you know, kind of the thinking that's going on here. Now, I'm trying to work out what the hell shooting is going on here. I think it's just shooting into Gaz, and it's like, or is it the War Banner? I think the War Banner guy dies, and Gaz takes his customary 4 wounds for the phase, essentially. Yeah, I'm just like, yeah, look, let's just blow him up, kind of thing. So it wasn't too bad. But yeah, so I think the War Banner guy goes down. Gaz takes the 4 wounds. And that is kind of like my, you know, basically my shooting phase. And we're just literally rolling those dice out now, which is good. You know, obviously they want the War Banner guy to die. I kind of have him running around, getting all, you know, in my face. He doesn't have like an invuln or anything. He's just like a pretty standard character. But I think, you know, my opponent's just like, yeah, okay, he's dead as shit. He's off the board. That's done. That's fine. So Gaz takes his customary 4 wounds. War Banner guy dies. Battle wagon dies, and the guard is looking in a comfortable position, but it's by no means certain, because I'm running out of OBSEC. You know, at this point, my opponent and I have actually similar levels of OBSEC. I've got like a squad and a Chimera, and a squad and a half out of the Chimeras, and that's all my OBSEC. And my opponent has a big squad of boys, a remnant squad of boys, and like 10 grots. So sure, I've got like scions and stuff like coming down and whatnot, but like by and large, you know, my opponent and I have similar levels of OBSEC left, and like I said, I'm going to lose 2 chimeras shortly, if not more. So by no means are the Orks out of this, by no means whatsoever. So I think I end up shooting his weird boy, and I end up using this. I use like a CP or like a plasma to make sure that it happens, but it's AP minus a lot. My opponent doesn't get like a save, and basically, yeah, I think between a plasma pistol and the hotshot las guns, the weird boy, he goes down. So that's good, you know. I've cleared a flank there, but like again, what you've got to remember is I'm only like a 10 model army. So if I lose 2 chimeras, I've actually lost 20% of my vehicle footprint. You know, I've got infantry, but I've lost. So it's definitely not over. And the Orks went first, and they have their Meganobs, and I had forgotten about the Meganobs at this point, so I wanted to know what's going through my mind. I'm thinking, oh yeah, I've got this game sewed up fucking tight, and then it's like, oh shit, he's got Meganobs. So I'm just explaining here to my opponent, like, you know what, I'm going to charge my Leman Rusted, and the person's like, are you sure? And I'm like, look, you see this hand gesture I'm doing. Like, you can just spread out. You can just spread out and start with a 20 boy footprint unit. It's just horrendous. You can tag everything you want, but I'm basically going to go in there, pardon me, and I'm just going to like tag you, and I go as minimum as possible because I want to reduce the chance he's going to like wrap around me. I want to avoid spending CP on like things like Desperate Breakout and stuff like that. I'm just tweaking it, but I do use Crush them because I'm like, you know what? Every boy that I kill now will make it easier next turn. I know that I'm going to start running out of anti-infantry firepower, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I use Crush them, and I think I get 3 hits, and I get like a few wounds. I think my opponent does. Do I get 3 wounds? Yeah, I do. My opponent doesn't get many saves. I think I actually end up running over like, yeah, I run over like 2 or 3 boys, which is like kind of impressive actually. You know, I mean, you kind of need. I suppose you can crush them with sentinels, but you need more attack with sentinels, and the sentinel chainsaws aren't really worth it for AP -1. Bit of a joke, really. But back in the day when you had sentinel powerlifters, those things were pretty cool. I wonder if someone let me know if does Strachan affect sentinels? Because I didn't think the priest. I think the priest only affects infantry. But if the priest and Strachan affect sentinels, then I really understand why the sentinel powerlifter was like such a fucking Chad unit at the beginning of 8th edition. Oh man, so many things. Like, slight tangent, just whilst like we're like wrapping up my turn, going to my opponent's turn, working on points and whatnot. So many cool combos that are just dead now. That just aren't a thing in 40k. So like, for those of you that missed 8th edition, there used to be a unit called the Sentinel Powerlifter, and it was like the thing from Aliens, the exosuit from Aliens, and it was actually kind of cool. And someone actually there was actually a list for a while to give you an idea of why 8th was so beloved and why 9th is so derided by a lot of people. Is in 9th edition, for the last 9 months, we've had Drukhari and Admech just battering everyone, and it's been stale and it's been boring, and no one new has been coming up with new, cool, crazy things. And then you have the beginning of 8th edition, where it's like one of the lists that went around winning tournaments was a Sentinel Powerlifter army, where you took 9 Sentinel Powerlifters and went around crushing people with big servo claws on Sentinels. That's cool. How cool is that? That's gone. They're legends. You can't even buy them anymore. Like, you know, like, I'm not going to go off on this too long, but it does make you sad when you realise how much has been taken away from the game and how much has been taken away from the Guard. But anyway, we're not here to reminisce about old times, and that is what the Imperium does do. My opponent, you know, does kill them. And then there's actually quite a funny moment here where I'm like, oh, all my guys are going to die. And I sort of say to the TO, like, oh, there's nothing I can do. There's no way I can get these guys out. And the TO's like, emergency disembarkation. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah. Emergency disembarkation, you can get out 6 inches instead of 3. And I'm like, oh. That's actually really cool. And that's what we're checking now. If like I can emergency disembark from the Chimera. And it's like, yeah, I can just emergency disembark from the Chimera. Like, that's fine. And the TO was like, yeah, that's what you can do. So I was like, okay, cool. Like, that's actually fun. Yeah, sure, I might lose people on 1s and 2s, but it means I don't lose the whole squad. So I roll my dice, and you know, a few guys break their legs on the way out, and it's like, okay, that emergency disembarkation was actually kind of cool. Now, the benefit of hindsight, now bear in mind the TO was the one that suggested this. Benefit of hindsight, could I have got out over my opponent's models? I mean, he's got the Chimera fully surrounded, right? So could I have got out using emergency disembarkation? I don't know. Genuinely, I never use it. Let me know if that's a mistake that we made in the battle. You know, hands up. You know, hold the hands up. Like, but it might. You know, if that's it, then obviously apologies to like Mike. I don't think it would have made a difference to the outcome of the game. That's fine. But you know, hopefully we didn't get that rule wrong. But you know, let us know down in the comment section below. Always, I guarantee you, there's never a game of 40k that's been played that someone hasn't made a mistake. You know, and this was one that we genuinely, I missed it. If it is a mistake, I missed it. My opponent missed it, and the TO told us to do it. So, you know, a bit of a crazy one anyway. Anyway, so yeah, I ended up getting the guys out and like going on the objective, and you know, it's all good in the neighbourhood. It doesn't affect the points in any way because you know, my opponent's holding 3 objectives already. Or maybe it does. Maybe I end up getting more points from it. I get 5 more victory points, so I would be holding more. No, I wouldn't, because I've got 3, and my opponent's still going to have 3. Yeah, I can't take that objective off my opponent, so it doesn't affect the points in any way. But it's just interesting. Maybe we did. You know, maybe we fucked that up. You know, that could be. You know, I've only just sort of realised that watching that back. Let us know. You know, and if it is, then that is a learning experience. And if Mike ends up watching this video, big apologies if that was the fuck up. You know, we were both going just off what the TO told us. Anyway, let's not labour. Let's not dwell or cry over spilt milk. You know, let's just you know, carry on with the old commentary and see what happens. So yeah, so get the guys out. It's all fun. You know, I lose a bunch on the way out, but then the Chimera dies, and the Leman Russ is tagged in combat. And Mike decides he doesn't want to consolidate into the to the infantry because it just gets some free hits on him and Orks with t-shirt saves. Like, don't want to take that. I think this is where he gets a bunch of attacks on the Leman Russ, and it's like, yeah, look, go for it. I don't mind. You know, you're not going to do like a huge amount of damage here. Yeah, winning on 5s. I mean, he could have done, but he doesn't end up doing a huge amount. So there we go. Now, yeah, that's all fine. So yeah, so that's basically it. Does a bit of damage to the Leman Russ. No harm done, kind of thing. Like it's nothing major. So that's like. That's basically the end of the guard turn, and it's going to be swinging back over to the Orks momentarily. Yeah, we're just working out the points at the end of the turn. He's just doing some crazy shenanigans. You know, we're just divvying up the points at the end of turn 2. So if you look at the game end of turn 2, you know, with that Chimera gone, even with just one Chimera being lifted up, you really get that sense that that's actually kind of like, that's a vehicle loss for the guard. You know, there's a lot less, you know, tan armor on the field just with a single Chimera being lifted up. I mean, at this point, there's one way of looking at it. You know, I've lost 3 Chimeras, or I've lost 30% of my vehicle. There's 2 ways of looking at it. So it goes over to my opponent's turn, but I think the guard are in a pretty good position this turn. But it's very much still in the balance because obviously you've got those Mega Knobs coming in. And my opponent is starting to get a little bit of force concentration on that right hand flank. You know, he's starting to break through the lines of meat shields. He's got the tank busters coming up. He's got Gaz. He's going to have Mega Knobs coming down on the flank. It's, you know, it's actually, my opponent is not in a bad position here. If he can, turn 3 is kind of make or break for him though. If he doesn't do enough damage here, then it's going to be difficult for him. It's going to be sort of not impossible, but it's definitely going to swing into the favour of the guard because. My turn 3, if I've still got like 2 Russes left by the end of my turn, 2 Russes that I can fire by the end of my turn 3. But at the beginning of my turn 3, I'm going to pick up those tank busters, and I'm going to pick up those boys, and then he's really, really limited. So that's what it comes down to. Can my opponent basically kill 2 Leman Russes? And you know, and get himself some nice points. He kind of needs to kill more. He actually needs to kill 3. He needs to take out of the field. He needs to basically have me limited to 1 operational Leman Russ next turn, because 1 operational Leman Russ can only do so much, but 2, with all the sponsons and the split firing potential, they can do some damage. So my opponent, to achieve this, has Mega Knobs, he has Gaz, and he has Rocket Boys. So, but the Rocket Boys are greatly diminished now. And don't forget that they're moving. So because they're moving and they're heavy, they're -1 to hit. And of course he gets +1 to hit for being a tank buster shooting a vehicle, but he's hitting on 5s. So it's not ideal for him. But here come the Mega Knobs, and I let out a big old groan. I'm like, oh my god, I totally forgot about the Mega Knobs. Oh, nightmare situation. And this is where what I mean by the game is on a knife edge. It doesn't look like it, but it actually is, because you're going to see in my opponent's turn 3 that basically my right flank, which contains, you know, about half of my remaining armoured assets and infantry, even with the hammering my opponent has taken, he's got no battle wagons left. You know, he's lost, you know, a big mob of boys. Even with all that, my opponent is basically in this turn going to pick up that right flank, almost to a man. I think there's like 1 infantryman that survives the massacre, and that is bad. I think one of the Russes survives, but it's tagged in combat. But that really actually limits me, because obviously when you think about it, the Russ that I charged in with is, you know, it can't fight. So that does limit me to 2 Russes. So if my opponent could just stop 1 more Russ from firing, he's going to have a really, that would win the game. I don't think he really has the assets to do it, but because he obviously has to blow that Chimera. You see, it's so important what that Chimera in front of Gaz is achieving, because if that Chimera wasn't there, my opponent could rocket the Lehman Russ behind, Gaz the Lehman Russ behind, and then Mega Knob the other Lehman Russ, and it's like what my opponent could do is he could Mega Knob 1 Russ, he could Gaz the other Russ, and he could Rocket Boy the Battle Cannon Russ. That's what he could do. And if that Chimera wasn't there, that's what my opponent could do. But as it is, that Chimera is there, and it's doing a fantastic job of basically making sure that Gaz either has to eat a Chimera, or the Rocket Boys have to clear a Chimera so Gaz can tag the 2 battle tanks behind. That's what that Chimera. That's how important that little 90-point double heavy bolter heavy stubber box of fun is having on the game. I mean, my opponent is happy to pick it up because it's, you know, it's a bring it down point. But it just goes to show, I know it sounds like I'm flogging a dead horse, you know, beating a dead drum, whatever you want to call it, but it just goes to show how important movement blocking is for the Guard, and how important movement blocking is in general. If you can movement block your opponent, especially an Ork army or another combat heavy army, you're going to frustrate them no end. So my opponent is, you know, customary at this point. He's flying off with he goes straight into shooting phase. I killed his psych, and no weird boy for you, bozo. And he goes straight into the shooting phase. As is tradition, he starts with the rocket boys, and he starts doing like you know wailing all the damage and whatnot onto the oh, this wasn't the rocket boys. Sorry, this was the shooters from the Mega Knobs. So not as is tradition, and he ends up picking up a couple of them, but I think 2 of them survive, which is big because obviously he wants to try and clear those, so he can. He wants to try and clear those so he can. Gaz can charge through, because he's not guaranteed to get that charge off with the Mega Knobs. Even with Here We Go and whatnot, it's a 9-inch charge. It is difficult. So what he's doing is he's firing all the little bits and bobs and whatnots at the couple of men that are movement blocking him. He's also ends up firing little bits and bobs and movement bits and bobs at the other squad as well, because the squad that's holding the 2 objectives. Now I actually make a mistake here. I just quickly pick up a guardsman. If I was playing cleverly, I would have actually picked up the other guardsman that's left, because there was 2 left in that squad, because that would have continued to movement block guards. But as it is now, he can actually move past. So my opponent doesn't end up killing that remaining guardsman. That guardsman is the one that ends up surviving, living, making it, passing the day. So that's kind of cool. So yeah, my opponent's like, look, I need to pick up some infantry, I need to do this, I need to do a bit of that, having a good time. And yeah, so like I said, he ends up picking up the infantry squad. He ends up, Gaz can get through now. The wall is finally broken. We've been trying for 3 turns we're halfway through turn 3, and my movement blockers are finally starting to disappear. But they've bought me 2-3 turns of shooting, which in this army is just massive. You know, it's just so important to have that movement blocking capability. The one thing this army is missing is a lot of indirect fire, though. I would have been raining down mortars on those grots and taking them off that home objective if I just had a 50-point mortar squad. In every single game, if I just had a 50-point mortar squad, even just the one, my god, it would have made such a difference. But I don't have it, and we can't cry over what we don't have. We can just wish that I had taken a better list. There we go. So you can see, you know, my opponent's having to make some pretty tough decisions. The pitter-patter of, well, pitter-patters that makes it sound insignificant. The Daka and Zappa and Granada and all these other crazy things of the various units. He's killing my infantry down. He has a Mega Nob. He has a Big Mech in Mega Armor, who he wants to send in to finish off those remaining guardsmen. Which he's like, that's what he ends up doing. So now it's like Gaz is going to have a good time. I think we're trying to work out what Gaz can charge in. And I'm just like, look, if Gaz can get through there, Gaz can tie up loads of stuff. My opponent's like, I just want to. I think my opponent's like trying to shoot with Mork's Raw here or Gork's Raw, whichever one. I'm not sure in the charge phase yet. But he's just trying to plink off some damage here and there. That's what my opponent's trying to do. Well, this could be the rockets. I have kind of got ahead of myself and explained, you know, what the overall Ork term, which makes it a bit difficult to then go back. But he's doing, you know, that's like I said, like all this shooting that he's doing. Obviously, it's difficult with like a post-game commentary. Would have been ideal if the audio had been working and we'd been recording for. You know, on this, but unfortunately the player audio didn't record, so we're doing the post-game commentary instead. As like I said, let me know what you think about that. So he is trying to like do some shots on the Lehman Russ and this, that, and the other. But yeah, that's basically like, yeah, he hasn't got a lot of shooting this time, and the Rocket Boys are greatly diminished in their capability, and Mork's Raw isn't like such a big deal. Yeah, it's not like a huge amount of shots. So I think my opponent is trying to do like some shooters and stuff at my he's trying to do some shooters at like my scions and whatnot, but I don't think it ends up paying off. It's a little bit like Dregs shooting, scatter shooting, but my opponent literally has to use every slugger bullet and everything at this point, because you know he's taken a hammering over 2 turns. He's taken a bit of a hammering. So he's just deciding on like, is he done, and charge phases and whatnot. It's just some sort of, just going through it now, wrapping up these sort of little bits of shots. I think one of his squads had like a Mega Zapper or something crazy. It was definitely cool. I think his sergeant on his Rocket Boys had like a custom Mega Zapper. Was it or like a custom something gun? It was pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. I kind of liked it. It was a custom Mega Blaster. I'm so used to like the Zap gun on the Battle Wagon, because I used to have a Zap gun on my old Battle Wagon when I was like 12. But it's a custom Mega Blaster. That was it. And it's like a plasma gun for the Orks, so it's kind of cool. Now, one thing that I was uncertain about, and someone please correct me down in the comment section below or let me know. I thought that Ork boys now, like the specialists like tank busters and whatnot, they needed to take like a spanner, which is the equivalent of like a sergeant, like for every like 5 regular boys or something. So he only had the 1 spanner in his tank busters, but again, it could easily have just been, you know, a mistake in a list. It could have been that its tank busters operate a little bit differently. I'm not sure. Like I said, I don't think there's ever been a game of 40k that's been played where, you know, people haven't made mistakes, so it doesn't really matter. It's just one of those, and there's so much complication in 9th edition these days, isn't there? Like, you know, I think so especially with some of the, you know, more recent books to come out, there's so many overlapping rules. Like 9th edition is definitely the edition of like competitive 40k with all the rules and stuff. But anyway, let's ignore the general hubbub and bubbub. Let's get into the battle. We are here to fuck things up. Pardon my language. This is definitely not a PG video. This is R-rated. And this tank is about to get an R-rated taste of Ork. When the that sounds awful. That sounds horrendous. Anyway, we'll leave it. We'll leave it in innuendo bingo. And these mega knobs are going to go in there and tear that tank to pieces. Now, I actually Overwatch and defensive gunners, and I do absolutely my hardest to try and stop those mega knobs from getting in there. But unfortunately, it was not to be. I did blow one away though, which is good. Like I think a Demolisher cannon shell right through the eye socket, very well aimed Demolisher cannon shell, just vaporized one mega knob, but the remainder did get in. I feel like I was a little unlucky because I got quite good with the number of shots and whatnot. I feel like I could have done a lot more damage to those mega knobs. When you think about it, I should have got 2 hits with the Demolisher cannon, followed by 2 wounds. Followed by, realistically, statistically, 2 go through. Realistically, that should be 2 dead mega knobs. And the plasma goes, they'll have 6 shots. So there's like a squad of 6, so they'd have a minimum of 3 shots each. Or something. I think the squad of 6. Anyway, point is that like that should have been another 2 hits. You know, I definitely feel like I should have got 2 mega knobs. But as it is, I didn't get 2 mega knobs. I only got the 1 mega knob on the way in. And the remainder come flying in. And they are having a good time. Now, what happens over here is there's the epic fight of the century. My Scions ended up finding themselves in combat a lot more often than I wanted them to. But the remaining Ork shooter boy, the 10-man squad that jumped all that time ago in turn 1, and his fearless leader, the knob Bob, go in against a squad of 5 Scions. Now, you know, this is not guaranteed victory for either side here. The Orks may have the greater combat potential. Even the old Slugger boy is getting like 3 or 4 attacks, something crazy, because the war is still sort of going on. So there's no guarantee here, that the Scions are going to survive. But at the same time, those Orks are going in there with very little buffs. There's like a big chopper and there's a shooter boy, basically. And then you've got versus 5 Scions. And then the Scions themselves, the Sergeant hits on 3s. He's got a chainsaw, because Scion Sergeants hit on 3s in combat as well as in shooting, which is something I only learned fairly recently. And, that's actually kind of like a big deal. Because it means that he can get 2 hits, and he only has to get a wound through on the Ork boys. And, the Ork boy is very unlikely to pass its armor save. Anyway, my opponent goes... I believe, I'm not sure which unit he's going with first. I suppose we'll have to see which tank I pick up. It's either the Mega Knobs or it's the main big squad of boys. I think does he go with Gaz first? Because Gaz is that can't be Gaz. There's too many. There's just too many attacks there for that to be Gaz. I reckon that was the Liam Russian combat with the Mega Knobs. Shall we find out? Is it Liam's Mega Knobs? There you go. Everyone knew better than that. So that goes to show there was so many attacks from those Mega Knobs, thanks to Goths and Exploding Sixes and other crazy stuff, that I couldn't tell whether that was a squad of a few Mega Knobs or a squad of boys. That goes to show you the absolute crazy power, damage, output, level of attacks that those Mega Knobs could put out. I mean, they were upgraded as well with like specialist detachment. I don't think they were Goths, so they were specialist mobs. They didn't get the Goth trait, to be fair, but they also didn't get the disadvantage for hitting with like kill saws and power claws and stuff. So they were hitting on 3s, and I think Gaz gives them full rerolls potentially. And so they were just at the volume of attacks they can put out. Mega Knobs, even like a squad of 5, they can literally kill anything. You send that unit against a horde, the volume of attacks they've got are going to clear that horde out. You send them against elite infantry, the volume of attacks combined with strength and AP, even if that elite infantry's got like an armor save or an invulnerable save, that's good, they're going to clear them out. And against armor, they ripped it open like a hobo tearing open the tin from tearing open the lid from a tin of beans. That's how nasty those Mega Knobs were when they went in against my Leman Russ. And he picks up the Chimera. That's Gaz's handiwork, picking up the Chimera as well. He was also a hungry hobo looking for his tin of beans, and he absolutely tore to pieces. They were both disappointed. There wasn't many squishy oomies on the inside. You know, that Chimera was already empty, and the Leman Russ has only got a crew of like 4 or 5 people. So the Orks did not dine well, but they did tear through a Leman Russ and a Chimera, which is 3 bring it down points. And he's tagged another Leman Russ. So I'm now down to, out of all my armour, I'm down to 5 vehicles, and only, you know, so I'm 50% down in the armour department, and I only have 2 Leman Russes capable of doing damage. That's it. Just 2 Russes capable of doing damage. Now, to be fair, one of those Russes is Pask, so he's an absolute beast. And the other one is the man of the tournament, let alone man of the match, the Battle Cannon Leman Russ. Now, just a bit of commentary whilst my opponent is, you know, we're doing some other attacks here and there. I think, you know, you've got the Ork boys going in against the sort of 2 hero Orks going in against the Scions, which is kind of a cool, epic fight. I love those little combats you get when it's like just a couple of, it's off on a flank and it's not like a big deal and it's not really going to affect the outcome of the game or the points or anything like that. But it's like it's a micro battle. It's a battle within a battle. It's battleception, where you've got the main event taking place and the main forces clashing and the lines fracturing and all that kind of stuff. But then off in the back, you've got 2 Orks versus 5 Scions, or, you know, like in my game 2, 5 Scions versus 10 Hormigorns, and it's like it's its own little micro battle, and those are actually the most fun. It gives you a bit of like, it's like playing a mixture of like Kill Team and 40k at the same time when that shit happens. You know what I mean? So, so I end up just being able to squeak, holding on to that objective, just via, like I said, I'm just like, oh mate, I quickly took myself. Do you mind if I just redo my like which models I take off, basically? So my opponent's like, yeah, that's fine. No, like I said, I had a very fun game, lots of take backsies and whatnot. I'm able to sort of squeak hold that objective, which is fine. And then we're on to, like, you know, there's the rest of the fighting. But like I said, at the end of this turn, my opponent has made a real dent in my forces. You know, he's picked up a Leman Russ, his first Leman Russ of the game. He's tagged 2 more Leman Russes, so they are essentially out of the action. And he's picked up 4 out of 5 Chimeras at this point, and my infantry is looking very thin on the ground. I've basically got like a 10-man squad out in the open. And I do have another 10-man squad that's in front of Pask on the ruin that's on my left-hand side, but they've not done much all game, but just basically hold an objective. But yeah, my opponent now, like, he, you know, tags the Leman Russ and whatnot, but he can't surround it. And even if he degrades the ever-living crap out of it, it doesn't matter, because I've got Relentless and whatnot to allow me to operate in full brackets and to retreat as far as I need to retreat in order to stop those boys from, you know, continuing to tie me up and whatnot. Even if he surrounded me, I could potentially desperate break out. It doesn't matter to me either way. I think my opponent also ends up consolidating into a bunch of onto my infantry that got out of the Chimera, but they are being very clever and they're surrounding there's an officer in there. So no matter, I needed my platoon commander to stick around. So no matter what happens, like, I've got my officer safe. And that's important because, again, he could desperate break out if he needed to, if he got wrapped and trapped. But as it is, I think what ends up happening is the Orks don't do as well as they want to in combat. This flank of 20 Ork boys has really struggled. I mean, considering it got a turn 2 charge off and it's had essentially like 4 rounds of combat, all it's really killed is the Chimera at this point, which is not good. You know, it really, you know, you've got a big unit of Orks there. You want it to be slamming through things, but I really do agree with people that say like Ork boys are struggling at the moment. You know, Ork boys aren't doing as well as people think they are, and I agree. I think Ork boys, they're either action monkeys. They're almost like, it's kind of sad, but they're almost like Chaos Space Marines in the Chaos Space Marine Codex, which is like, you don't really want to take them. You know, you're better off taking grots for being action monkeys, so you don't really need boys. You know, it's sad. It is sad, because obviously we all want to take boys, because boys are cool, and orc boys are, you know, just the core of the army. But they need some help right now. They are more durable, but the lack of custom force field and the difficulty with dealing with armor makes and elite stuff makes them tricky. AP-1 on the choppers is nice. There's a lot of storm shields out there at the moment, and there's a lot of armies out there like I think it's Argent Shroud Sisters who just ignore AP for, you know, unless you're a Scion basically. So it's tricky. I know the Scion. I know there's the. I know that the Orc boys are struggling at the moment. But yeah, just whilst my opponent's working all this out, as exploding sixes and crazy nonsense. You know, what I was talking about before is, if you look at what's tied up essentially, and which were the first Russes to really die and get taken out of the game, it was the Demolisher cannon ones. Even with a 30-inch range on those Demolisher cannon turrets, it's real tricky, because I tend to find that they'll poke out, blow something up, have a good time, and then they'll either die because if they're in range, then the enemy's anti-tank is almost certainly in range, or they'll get tagged, or they'll get chopped up in combat. And it's like, I don't really know how to remedy that situation, because on the one hand, you could be like, well, stick heavy flamers on the Demolisher cannon, and it's like, yeah, that's a good idea. But then on the other hand, it's like, but I'm not taking advantage of his ballistic skill, then I'm not getting as much damage output. I can't tell you the amount of times where the Demolisher cannon, look, I mean, in this game alone, I think I've only ever had, I only had one good volley with the Demolisher cannons, and the rest of the time, just through my bad luck or opponent's good luck, they just weren't doing as much damage as I needed them to do. And I really often, I mean, almost every single game, I needed those plasma cannons, or if you wanted to, multi-melter cannons if you were in a different game. I needed my extra weapons, like my sponsons, to finish off the enemy. And so I don't really want to take heavy flames, because they won't, they whilst they would protect me from assault, they're not going to allow the Legion Rush tank commander to do what it needs to do, which should just be a deletion unit. So I do like Demolishers, and they are fantastic, but my battle cannon Russ was just never in danger. And you know what's the best armor? The best protection is when you're in range and the enemy isn't. Now that can, I suppose, be tricky to achieve on a lot of 40k boards, but I suppose maybe the answer is it's not one or the other, it's both. So you have your brawler Legion Russes going up the board, and they soak up the firepower, whilst your other Legion Russes sit back and do the long range damage. I wonder if in a future sort of scenario, if taking normal Legion Russes with flames and Demolisher cannons to keep them cheap, and they draw the fire, and then at the back you've got like your 3 tank commanders or 3 tank commanders and Pask, and they're the ones with your battle cannons and like your plasma or your heavy bolters, and they sit back and they're less of a threat, but they do more damage consistently because they live throughout the whole game. I mean, that's definitely something to explore. I mean, if your opponent is having to deal with heavy flamers, Demolisher cannons, chimeras, heavy flamers, hellhounds, that's all up in his face, and then it allows your other tank commanders, your manticores, to stay back and do the damage. That might actually be kind of an interesting concept to try. Anyway, in terms of back to the battle, because that's what it's meant to be, a commentary on the battle, right? In terms of what's going on, I end up by a whisker being able to hold on to the objective up top with my Scions, because I'm able to kill one Orc, and I'm able to keep one of my guys on the objective, and his knob couldn't quite make it onto the objective because he was already base to base with me. And yeah, we're just adding, and then obviously like he killed some infantry, and I poked some Orcs back, and it was all fine. But essentially, look at the board now. Look at the summary. End of Orc turn 3. The guard firepower seriously reduced. Guard infantry seriously lacking on the board, and I'm in a corner. I'm in Castle Steel Legion. I'm in Castle Mordian right now. I'm just, baby is stuck in the corner. So whilst I've got a lot of damage potential, my opponent is dominating the board control. But I have, you know, a guardsman here hidden in a ruin on the right hand side. I've got a scion holding an objective up there, and I've not had my turn 3 yet. And like I said at the beginning of my turn 3, my opponent really needed to shut down more of my shooting, and he just wasn't able to do that. Diminished tank busters, you know, having to rely on combat, still being movement blocked in several places, his boys being tied up. But if I hadn't sent my Liam Russ in there, those boys would have been flooding through, tying everything up, and that would have been game. So the fact that I charged that Liam Russ in, whilst it meant that that one couldn't fire for a couple of turns, it did mean that I now get to do what I want with my two remaining Liam Russes. Now what I end up doing here now is I fall back with like some. I put the survivors from the flanking Chimera in my remaining Chimera, and because of that, it means that they actually get to do something this turn, because they get in the Chimera, even though they've fallen back, because now the Chimera is now occupied, it can shoot the Lads Gunner raids, because it's not the unit that's shooting the Lads Gunner raids, it's just a need for the Chimera to have someone in it to shoot the Lads Gunner raids. So that's kind of cool. So it's a little trick there. You can fall back, get in a Chimera, and the infantry can still activate that ability for the Chimera to shoot the Lads Gunner raids. So that's nice. So what I end up doing is I'm like, look, I've got my reserve squad of infantry here. I'm going to bring those out. I've got my 10 infantry on this flank. I'm going to bring them out. I'm debating, do I go towards that objective? I'm like, you know what? No. That flank is lost. It is dead. It's dead to me. I don't want anything to do with that flank anymore. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to full on pull back into Castle Mordian. And if I can hold this line, then it means that I can destroy everything. And if I can hold this line and move in such a way that my opponent is not going to be able to get around, then what that means is when it comes to turn 4, because my opponent will hopefully have no tank busters left, what that means is that I can basically mean my opponent can do no damage turn 4, because if I remove his tank busters, movement block Gazgul, and pull back with everyone else and pick up those boys, then what that means is the only threat that he has to my tanks is like his Mega Knobs, and I'm probably going to lose the other Lehman Russ Demolisher, but that's fine because I'll have 3 Lehman Russes left over and they won't be threatened turn 4. So that's my plan. My plan at this point is bring the Scions in the same place as the last Scions, use them to finish off the remaining two Orks. You know, that's all. You know, that's all gravy. I think I do debate bringing them in and trying to drop on the objective and raise the banner, but I'm like, you know what, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to kill the remaining Ork Knob first and then raise the banner the turn after. And then I'm basically going to fall back into Castle Mordian, and then I'm going to like hold the line. I'm going to first rank fire, second rank fire, you know, Zulu style, and I'm just going to essentially deny my opponent really anything for his turn 4. So look, I movement block there. I make sure that Gazgul can't heroically intervene. You know, we play around with the movement there. My opponent's like, make sure you don't heroically intervene. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. I measure where Gazgul can get to, and I'm like, Gazgul can't get to that Chimera. He could get to those infantry, but he can't get to that Chimera, and he can't get to that Lehman Russ. So I'm like, that's fine. Like, that's actually fine. If he wants to kill 10 infantry, that's okay. But as long as he can't get to the as long as he can't get to my Lehman Russes, that's the important point at this stage of the game. I think I can't remember if I end up moving the Battle Cannon Russ or not. I think I do end up moving it a little bit just to play it on the safe side, but it is actually safe now, which is obviously the important thing, because I don't want my opponent to be shutting down you know, sort of any more firepower. I mean, I'm already struggling in terms of firepower on Lehman Russes and on whatnot this turn. So but yeah, so we're sort of just going through the final bits of the you know, lining up angles, you know, checking, you know, movement blocking, all that kind of stuff, and I'm just conferring my opponent, like, you know, what angles of fire I've got and all that kind of stuff. But my sort of aim for this turn is to essentially deal with the boys who are going to tie me up deal with the rocket lads, you know, the tank busters who are going to blow me up, and then essentially just block off those combat elements on the right flank. And if I'm able to do that, then that's really, really good. That will essentially, you know, mean that the only thing I have to, that will return board control to me, and essentially be the only thing that I have to worry about is finishing off Gaz and those Mega Knobs, and then, you know, what he's only got left at that point is Grots. So you can kind of see it's a really interesting game because it's, you know, really swinging back and forth. You know, on the one hand, my opponent is, you know, really, you know, he's had really good aggressive control. He's forced me into a corner, but on the other hand, it's like, whilst, you know, we're all barneying in this bottom left-hand corner, there's almost nothing in no man's land. You know, and he's, you know, smashing through tanks, but every time he smashes through a wall of tanks or a wall of men, behind it is the firepower that's continuing to punish him. Anyway, at this point, I believe I'm sort of calculating like first rank fire, second rank fire. I'm just checking that I've got, you know, the angles that I want on those boys. You know, I've not officially gone into the shooting phase yet. I'm sort of just half, you know, sort of in between the shooting, in between the movement phases and whatnot. But, you know, I haven't rolled any dice yet, so I can still make some, like, last-minute adjustments and everything. And, you know, to be fair, like, this was a very fun game. You know, like, my opponent and I had plenty of take-backsies at, you know, many points throughout the game. We just wanted to start the tournament right. And we've been brought on stream, you know, by the TOs because, you know, originally it was meant to be like a, you know, Dark Elder, AdMech kind of game, and the TOs would be like, we don't want to see that, we don't want that to be the first stream because we're going to have plenty of that later on. So they brought us on to have like, look, let's start the tournament off on the right note. Steel Legion versus Orks, super cool. That pairing was already natural, so it just made sense to bring that pairing onto the battlefield. So that was really cool. So yeah, fire, you know, first rank fire, second rank fire, volleying las bolts into Ork boys. You know, it's a lot of shots and all this kind of stuff. But you know, it's not you know, not too bad. Like, I don't cause too many casualties. And so yeah, I think this is the point. Yeah, there you go. So I just say to my opponent, look, I really do want to like just move that Leman Russ back, and he's like, yeah, of course, man. You said you were going to do that. I even said that I was going to do it, and then just, you know, sort of tilted around the tank, and then just forgot. And I said, look, before I do anything else, do you mind if I just move that? And he was like, yeah, of course, man. Like, you said you were going to do that. You just forgot to move it. I was like, yeah, cool, thanks. So that was really, you know, obviously, you know, playing for intention, all that kind of stuff. But now it's like, yeah, and I think, you know, let's just get like, just find the battle cannon. You know, I'm just like, you know what, let's just get rid of those tank busters. I could like split fire and whatnot, but I'm like, you know what, I just need to remove that threat. I just need to remove those tank busters. So I just fire everything from that tank into them, and because I'm like, look, they won't get a save. That's the thing. You know, they won't get a save at all because it's, even though they're on a 6 up and then they're in cover, it's a 5 up. Battle cannon's aim for -2. That just takes that save away. And so, you know, I end up just like butchering those boys, you know, butchering those tank busters just with the battle cannon Leman Russ. And then obviously I've got like plasma cannons and other kind of stuff going in. But like, you know, it's just you know, firing away, doing a lot of damage, you know, killing them off, which is, you know, exactly what I need to do. And I can draw a line of sight of them because they're in the building and all that kind of you know, crazy shenanigans and whatnot. But you know, the plasma cannons go in. There was still, you know, because of the blast rule, the plasma cannons got the maximum 6 shots because there was more than 5 in the squad, so they got a minimum of 3 each. But for plasma cannons, that means they get max shots, which is really a nice thing about plasma cannons because they're only D3. Anytime that you shoot them at anything that's got 6 people or more in it, they're on maximum shots. Unlike the battle cannon, Demolisher cannon, which is like, yeah, I get like a minimum of 3, but I don't get max shots against unless it's 11 plus. Plasma cannons are really good for, to be honest, I found in most games that my plasma cannons were just firing on full blast nearly the whole time. Either I was, you know, firing them into vehicles and using the stratagems, or I was firing them into relatively big squads and, you know, getting decent, you know, and getting like, you know, decent, you know, like, you know, the maximum 3 shots. So I pick up the tank busters, which is great, and then now it's that. Now I'm like, you know what? Everything else has to go into those boys. So I did a little bit of first rank fire, second rank fire. I did a little bit of chimera shooting at them. You know, it's all just, you know, like little pitter patter of shots here and there, just trying to just trying to make my opponent fail as many of those Ork boy saves as possible. You know, so we've got heavy bolters and whatnot going in from various sources. And then I think I've got, like, you know, the lad's gonna raise and all this kind of stuff. And it's just everything that you see firing now. Everything you see firing now is going into those boys. And I just want to kill as many of them as possible. I think I actually roll poorly with Pask. Which is... And actually Pask doesn't get as many shots as he should. Or I'm stupid and I end up... oh, that was it. No, Pask does end up firing. But... I think I was stupid and I didn't get maximum shots with Pask for some reason, or he ends up wounding badly. But the point is that I don't get the Pask. I thought would pick like loads of that squad up, and he doesn't. So which is pretty insane. But you know, as you can see, there's a whole meat grinder going in to these boys now. They're really reduced in terms of their capability. Well, regardless of, like, you know, number of shots and stuff from Pask and his performance, like, the boys are getting chopped down. It's an absolute whirlwind. It's a wood chipper. It's a meat grinder. I'm just slinging in like las bolts, heavy bolters, heavy stubbers, plasma, you know, everything that I can get my hands on. I'm chucking into that squad of boys because I need to kill them. I do make a slight mistake, whereas I should have, like, first rank fired, second rank fired this squad first to make sure that they'd be, like, in rapid fire range. But I'm like, you know what, you know, whatever, it doesn't really matter. Like, I'd rather get, like, blast rules and all that kind of stuff. The Scions that dropped in, by the way, drop in, and they finish off that last Ork boy up top. I think the plasma pistol actually fails, and I'm like, you know what, I'll just rely on the hotshot las guns. 2 wounds go through, you know, 2 5s and 6s go through, and my opponent goes to make a save, and I'm like, sorry buddy, it's AP -2 on those hotshots. And you know, that's just good, isn't it? That's just good. So at this point I'm debating, do I move that squad of infantry, or do I, like, fire with them? Because I'm like, I really don't want Gaz to start getting into my lines and do some crazy things. And I think I end up moving them. I'm just yeah, I actually do end up moving them, because I'm like, the thing is that I could get a few extra las gun shots on that squad of boys, but to be fair, like, if I do that, if I stay still and shoot, Gaz is going to get into my lines and he could start blowing up chimeras, blowing up infantry. He could possibly even start tagging Lehman Russes and some other crazy thing. He's got a big base, he is a beast. So I'm like, you know what, let's just make sure, and I agree with my opponent, like, look, Gaz cannot physically charge anything next turn. And my opponent understands what I'm doing there, and he's like, yeah, I agree, Gaz, you know, based on his movement, because it's reduced now because he's, like, wounded, based on all that kind of stuff, Gaz is not going to be able to get in there. But then comes a difficult decision, because I'm like, okay, well, there's still these boys left over, and sure, they might fail some morale and whatnot, but actually, at the end of the day, I need those boys to not tie up 3 Lehman Russes or something crazy. Do you know what I mean? I really need them to die. So I bayonet charge. I fix bayonets. And on hindsight, I really should have, like, bayonet charged with the squad that I end up moving with, but I think it was a long charge and it wouldn't have been guaranteed, and if I didn't get it off, then Gazgul could have got in. So, you know, it's a 10-inch, there we go, that's not a problem. So then I charge in the mob of this fresh squad of men, and I charge in the officer, because the officer hadn't had to fall back, because he'd been surrounded by men, he hadn't actually had to fall back. So the officer and a squad of 10 men do end up going into that squad of boys and yeah, bayonet charging them. And my thinking is, I literally don't care if, you know, that squad of infantry gets massacred. My thinking is, all I need is for either the men or the officer to survive, and if they can do that, then those boys are tied up, and that's all that matters to me. That's all that matters to me. So the squad of men, they fix bayonets, glory for the Emperor, they charge in, junior officer goes with them, because I'm like, look, he's got a bunch of extra attacks, that's the important bit. So, you know, the junior officer gets in, boom. And so now we've got 2 units tying up. My opponent's going to have to kill, you know, all of those guys to get out. And it's unlikely. I mean, I know he is Orks and there's a few of them left, but, you know, it's unlikely that he'll kill all of them, considering I get to go first and he can't interrupt. So, you know, my boys go in, they do their bayonets, they go charging in. I think I end up doing, like, some wounds to him. I'm not sure how many, but I do know that I end up actually getting a good few bayonet wounds in on the Ork boys. And I think that does cause my opponent to have to, you know, take some saves, but... yeah, so there you go. So, oh, is this my officer going next? Maybe I don't do any wounds, but I think my officer gets a couple of wounds through. And the end result is I definitely, either between the men and the officer, I definitely end up picking up a couple of boys, which is great because that's like 8 less attacks that I had to deal with. You know, 8 less attacks. That officer actually ended up doing really, really well. Now my opponent ends up putting all his attacks into the infantry squad, apart from his knob, who I believe goes into the officer, but this is the wounds going into the men at this point. So there's a whole bunch, but I already see that there's not 10. As long as there's not 10, I don't really care. Like, I just need some of my boys to survive to tie up that mob of Orks. And then this is the knob, right? This is the epic bit, right? So the knob goes in. Against I tell my opponent, like, oh, do you want to kill the officer or do you want to kill the men? And he's like, and then I explain to him, like, either way he's going to be tied up. He's like, well, I'm going to go after the officer then. That's the Orky thing to do. And also the officer allows you to fall back and shoot and all sorts of crazy things. So he gets loads of hits and loads of wounds, and it's like, okay, I need to make 5 of invulnerable saves, and I make all 3 5 of invulnerable saves on my officer. The refractor shield kicks in and he makes all of his saves, and it's an absolutely, like, epic, awesome moment. You know, like, really, really cool. And that officer actually ended up, like, sort of peering into the future. That officer actually ends up like surviving and essentially killing his way. Like, the knob fights him again and he still makes his 5 invulnerable saves. It's insane. He makes like 5 or 6 5 invulnerable saves in a row and ends up, like, living. So absolute hero officer, you know, really, you know, absolutely, you know, just so cool. Like an officer with a chainsaw dueling a knob, and the you know, cuts down 2 of the knob's bodyguards with his chainsaw. In return, the crackling primitive power claw does try to dissect the and bisect the officer, but he parries it, and his refract shield kicks in, and he does end up surviving. My opponent ends up losing a bunch of Orks to morale. You know, again, we've said this before, but we'll say it again. Ork boys taking morale just feels sad. Or, you know, I mean, it's important that, I suppose, morale is an aspect of the game, but, you know, of all the factions you chose to make susceptible to morale, big squads of boys. I mean, I suppose it makes sense now, obviously, because, you know, not a lot of them are dead. Not a lot of Orks left on the field, to be fair, but still, it's not a good feeling. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was plenty of other times when it didn't feel right either. But yeah, so this is my opponent. Like, yeah, that's basically my turn. So I have killed the rocket boys. I've cleared back the main unit of tying up boys. I've killed the remaining, you know, scattered elements in sort of the top left. And the units that could tie me up, I have tied up instead with Guardsman, Glorious Bayonet Charge. I'm holding loads of objectives. My opponent's actually only on 1 objective this turn because of my moving. Yeah, it basically comes down to my opponent has a Lemur's Demolisher he can kill, but that's kind of it. That's kind of everything he can really achieve in his turn. It's obviously not ideal for him because he knows now that, okay, that's 3 Lemur Russes facing down my Mega Knobs, the remaining boys. That's not good. And at this point, guys, the Guard are in a comfortable position. Okay, at this point the Guard are in a comfortable position because we only really have the Mega Knobs left to deal with, and I have 2 plasma tanks and a battle cannon tank commander with plasma as well. You know, I've really got plenty to deal with them. Obviously Gaz is a threat, but as we know, he can't do anything this turn, so that's not the end of the world. Like, you know, and I can realistically just kite him for the rest of the battle. Like, he only moves like what 5 or 7 inches now that he's a bit injured. Like, he doesn't move a huge amount, so it genuinely, you know, it doesn't matter. And my opponent's like, my opponent then thinks he can charge my Chimera, but I'm like, yo, no, you've got to take into account that he can't breach through that wall, so he's really got to get the back end of his base round it and then charge the Chimera. When he realizes that, my opponent's like, oh yeah, no, that's what we said. So in that case, he's like, he thinks he's like, oh, I'm going to hide Gaz, blah, blah. And I'm like, look, you might as well go as far forward as possible with him because you can't hide him. But I think he ends up just being like, look, I'm just going to go for it. I'm like, look, he can't die. I can't kill him. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can't kill him. But he's like, I think he ends up moving him forward a little bit more, but it doesn't matter because like Gaz isn't going to die, but he is going to like do loads of like Morks raw shooting. But essentially, you know, he does the pitter patter of, I say pitter patter, he does the major firepower of Morks raw and a bunch of custom shooters from the Mega Knobs, but it doesn't do a whole lot of damage. And then, you know, it's kind of depressing Mork's gun, you know, or Gork's gun, whichever one it ends up being. But yeah, so what happens in his turn is he basically kills the Leman Russ in combat. That's really, you know, we're doing shooting and whatnot now, but really that's not what's going to do any damage. We both know that. He's just doing it because he's got guns. He's not got much left on the battlefield, and we're doing okay for time. So yeah, that was it. So basically, you know, he does like a couple of wounds just to make sure that the target's going to go down. Ends up going in. But yeah, like I said, it's, you know, he's doing some damage, ensuring that he kills the target, but it's comfortably in the Gaz favour. I mean, if you look at what's left, you know, you've got Gaz, who can, like, you know, and some Mega Knobs, and like once they're dealt with, that's it. Now, like I said, I think my opponent did end up moving him back, but it was like, you know, my opponent had let me move a Leman Russ, so I was like, yeah, of course, move Gaz. Like, that's the kind of game we were having. It was a proper game of 40k. It wasn't like a competitive bullshit game or anything like that. Even though it was a tournament, neither one of us was using like the best armies and whatnot. And also, you know, when you're in like a position, when both players know that it's kind of in one player's favour, kicking someone while they're down or being a bit dickish about it, it's not a good game. It's not what you want to do. You know, you've got to be honourable and all that kind of stuff. You've got to play the game right. So that's what we ended up doing. Now, I have to say, I'm not entirely sure what these scores are at the top. 29-29 doesn't seem right, by the way, so I just ignore that. It might be right, but I feel like it was definitely more in the Guards' favour at this point. But maybe we pull ahead in the last turn 3, turn 4, turn 5. Maybe that's what happens. It was, I have to say, points-wise, it was fairly close the first few turns, but it wasn't really. The points weren't really reflecting the state of the battle at this point. Both sides had beaten the crap out of each other. Don't get me wrong, and I'm not putting down the progress that the Orks have made, but you know, it's difficult. You know, they don't have the long range damage that they really needed for this game. So my opponent ends up getting like a good charge roll and whatnot. I think he makes a mistake at one point, but we catch it, where he thinks he can like pile in with his Mega Knob 6 inches, and it turns out that he can't pile in with his Mega Knob 6 inches. That's actually, or consolidate with them 6 inches. That's only for normal boys. Mega Knobs can't do that. So if you see us like move the Mega Knob after he blows the tank up, if you see us moving the Mega Knobs forward loads and then move them back again, that's just where we catch that mistake. So, you know, the Mega Knobs go in. They Sliceus and Diceus the Leman Russ, and it's like, you know, Gaz goes in. I think we give the honour of killing the tank to Gaz, but I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. But yeah, so just the opponent's putting its dice together, rolling some dice, you know, all that kind of good stuff. So, yeah, I think we're just having a bit of a chat at this point, to be fair. Like 2 old women having a bit of a gasser. But anyway, so yeah, I think we give the honour to Gaz So I think that's what you're going to see him rolling now. So like, or maybe the Meganobs went for it, because I doubt Gaz gets that many attacks. But look, whoever got the honour of doing it, that tank is absolutely toast. Like, it's absolutely toast. You know, there's no way it's going to survive that many sort of power claws and whatnot going in. And does it explode? No, it doesn't. So that's kind of, if it had exploded, that actually would have been quite a big deal, because it would have meant that Gaz would have taken some more wounds and I might have been able to kill him. But as it is, I'm basically unable to kill Gaz this game now, because he's still got plenty of wounds left. I'm not sure if he was degraded at this point, but I think he's degraded later on. So this is where we do the whole 6-inch pile-in thing, and then consolidate, and then my opponent's like, no, can't do it, move him back. And I'm like, alright, fair enough. So you'll see us do it, and then quickly move him back again. So yeah, so that's, oh maybe, yeah, so there we go. Yeah, move him back, and then move, like, just nudge him forward a bit, basically. So yeah, that was basically my opponent's turn. Yeah, that's my opponent's turn. So now it's up to the guard. So basically, what happens, guys, is you know, we're gonna wrap this up, to be fair, and I might let you guys watch the remaining sort of turns out, you know, without my commentary, because to be fair, what happens is I pick up the Mega Knobs, I pick up the normal boys, you know, what's left of them. It's just Gazgul running around, and he's having a good time, but you know, I end up kiting him for the rest of the game. So yeah, so I put my remaining spare firepower and whatnot into the boys. I think yeah, there is a few attacks here and there and whatnot in that ongoing combat. I lose a few guardsmen and whatnot, but you know, that is essentially like, you know, that's the end of it there. So so what ends up happening at the end of the game? Those boys end up getting picked up. The Mega Knobs ends up dying. Gazgul ends up living. And I try and do a sneaky last-minute push over onto my opponent's objectives with like scions and stuff, and we're like moving guys, and I'm trying to get like extra points and whatnot, but it doesn't pay off. But the you know, in the end, what is left for like you know, I know I'm skipping ahead a little bit here, guys, but you know, in the end, you know, essentially the guard have the 3 remaining Liam Russes. I have the Chimera left. I kite Gazgul. The Mega Knobs die, and I think at the end of the game, it's Gazgul, the Commandos. I try a long charge on the Commandos, but I don't quite take it off them. It's Gazgul, 2 Commandos, and some Grots that end up being left over. And the end score for the guard. You know, this was where the game swung into the guard's favour, and the end score for the guard is in the guard's favour. I believe it was like 75.66 points. So just a nice cheeky little 9-point win there. But yeah, it was when I realised that I could like kite him, and when those rocket boys, you know, took so many casualties and whatnot from getting out, that I realised that I actually had a really good chance of being able to, you know, to win this game. I mean, the fact that my opponent went first was a disadvantage. You know, just sort of doing like a bit of a post game summary. Like, the fact that my opponent went first was tricky, but I think he needed to go first in order to have a chance. I think if he'd done better force concentration, he definitely could have overwhelmed a flank and then moved along. But then perhaps I still would have been able to have, you know, the number of walls of tanks, of chimeras and men to scupper him. It's a tricky one. Who knows? I think it was a pretty close game, 9-point difference in the end. So you know, there you go. So there you go, guys. I am gonna end the commentary here. I'm going to let you guys enjoy the soundtrack and enjoy, you know, seeing, you know, the guard do the remaining few movements and whatnot. Like I said, it's comfortably in the guard's favour at this point, sort of end of turn 4. So there you go. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Please let me know if you've enjoyed this kind of commentary. I know in places it's been a bit stuttery and whatnot, and obviously I've done the commentary a few days after the game and everything, so not everything's been like 100% clear. But I'm going to be honest with you, if I'd done the commentary straight after the tournament, I would have forgotten everything anyway because I'd just come off 5 games in an 8-hour round trip. So, either way, it was always going to be a bit rusty. But let me know what you think about these kind of battle reports. It was, for me personally, it was really interesting being on like the top-down camera. I kind of be interesting if I could get that kind of setup myself. For my battle reports. I don't know. What do you guys think? I like the top-down camera, but I sometimes feel like you can't really see the fine detail. It was kind of okay in this battle report because you had all like the guard tanks, but if you can imagine if you're playing a more typical 9th edition game, like it must be really difficult to pick out the fine detail. So you guys let me know what you're thinking, what you think about the battle reports. If it's something that you enjoy, I'll definitely consider doing, looking into setting up my own sort of top-down scenario. Or if you prefer the more traditional camera point of view style ones, please, again, let me know down in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed this battle report. Like I said, I'm going to let you enjoy the remaining sort of 20-30 minutes without my voice, my nasally voice, drowning out over the music. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. Leave lots of feedback, and of course, I'll see you guys next time.